would appear we're ready. Okay. Call the meeting to order. Regular City Council meeting for May 3rd, 2022. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. Meeting announcement. The information is available on the first page of the agenda for those who want to participate remotely. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Mark Joseph.
Here.
Councilmember David Oro.
Here.
Councilmember Pierre Washington.
Here.
Mayor Leon Garcia.
Here.
Vice Mayor Miriam Abadamos is excused.
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
Move on now to report on closed session confirmation of reportable action. Mr. Ross?
Mr. Mayor, council members, members of the public, the council convened an open session at 5:30 to address the matters agendized for closed session consideration. After determining there were no public comment communications on those matters, the council adjourned to closed session at 5:32. With respect to each of the matters, I will do a written report upon return from closed session under Government Code Section 54-957.1. The closed session concluded at 6:30 p.m., but there is a need to reconvene in closed session to address a further matter under closed session item number 1 at the conclusion of the meeting. That would conclude the report unless there are questions.
Any questions from council? Thank you, Mr. Ross. We have a number of proclamations next in order. Proclamation recognizing May 2022 as Water Safety Month. Is there anyone here to receive this? No, we'll forward it. Okay. Thank you. Whereas we recognize the vital role that swimming and water-related activities play in sustaining good physical and mental health and enhancing the quality of life for all. And whereas understanding the essential role that water safety education, following and reinforcing water safety rules, and teaching individuals how to swim is essential in preventing drownings and recreational water-related injuries. And whereas according to the Drowning Prevention Foundation, drowning is a leading cause of injury-related deaths among California's children's ages 4 and under. And whereas acknowledging the contributions made by the recreational water industry, as represented by the organizations involved in National Water Safety Month Coalition in developing safe swimming facilities, aquatic programs, home pools and spas, and related activities providing healthy places in recreation, learn and grow, and built self-esteem, confidence, and a sense of self-worth to the quality of life in our communities. And whereas the Philip West Aquatic Center is an authorized provider through the American Red Cross to train our lifeguard staff how to recognize and respond to aquatic emergencies and provide high-quality aquatic programming to our community that teaches and life-saving skills. And now therefore be it proclaimed that I, Leon Garcia, Mayor, City of American Canyon, proclaim that the month of May 2022 as Water Safety Month in American Canyon, and urge all citizens to learn the lifelong skills of swimming, support drowning prevention efforts, and participate in aquatic programs offered by the Philip West Aquatic Center. Thank you. Would you like to comment?
I just would like to thank my staff at the pool. They work very hard to make sure that they can recognize and respond to all aquatic emergencies, as well as train our community on the importance of learning how to swim. If you would like to visit our website and see all the amazing programs, being from CPR AED for basic first responders, or for you at home to be able to provide care to your family members, we do offer CPR classes as well as swimming lessons for all ages here in American Canyon. So thank you to my amazing team, because they are pretty awesome. So
Thank you. I think we would all agree to that. They do an outstanding job. Thank you. And we're very fortunate to have the facility and all the staff to provide those services. Next will be a proclamation recognizing May as National Bike Month. Whereas the City of American Canyon recognizes May 2022 as National Bike Month, which creates an opportunity for our community to celebrate the simple joys of getting outside and riding a bike. Whereas bicycling stimulates fun and inspires a healthy and active lifestyle for all ages and skill levels. And whereas bicycle riding is an environmentally friendly form of transportation that increases the air quality, reduces air pollution, carbon dioxide, and greenhouse gas emissions that contribute to global climate change. And whereas having bikeways are good for the entire community, calming traffic, reducing congestion on roadways, creating a safer environment for people walking and children playing. And whereas bicycling can help improve mental health by reducing stress, anxiety, depression, and can enhance creativity and productivity. And whereas the programs like Safe Routes to School, Kid at Cal Mass events, and Bike to Work and School Days provide critical opportunities to both educate and encourage members of our community to walk and bike. And whereas the City of American Canyon encourages everyone to participate in our Kid Cal Mass event Saturday, May 7th, 2022, from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. in partnership with Napa County Bicycle Coalition, the American Canyon Police Department, American Canyon Fire District, and American Canyon Cycling. And whereas the City of American Canyon encourages everyone to bike to work or school on Friday, May 20th, 2022, and pledge to ride their bicycle for short trips at least once a week throughout the month of May 2022. And now therefore be resolved that I, Mayor Leon Garcia, on behalf of the entire City Council, do hereby proclaim month of May as Bike Month, and Friday, May 20th, 2022, is Bike to Work and School Day in American Canyon. So get your bikes up.
Mayor Garcia, we have Kara Venor of Napa Valley Bike Coalition.
Very good. Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. The Napa County Bicycle Coalition thanks the City of American Canyon for proclaiming May as Bike Month. The city's support of a month that celebrates and elevates biking is heartening, especially now when bicycling is one of the best answers to some of our toughest health and climate challenges. Biking is a way forward, literally and figuratively, of course, and very much our future. And that future starts now at the beginning of a month full of bike activities, including Bike and Work to School Day on May 20th. We hope everyone will join us in going by bike that day and visiting the Energizer Station. We're partnering with American Canyon Parks and Recs on that here. The station has snacks and small treats for those who decide to go by bike. And we're thrilled to be partnering as well in the Kiddical Mass event this Saturday. The proclamation honors these events, but also the people of American Canyon who bike for recreation, as well as those who commute by bike for health or for the planet. And that includes American Canyon resident and planning commissioner, Tammy Wong. We chose Tammy Wong as one of our co-bike champions of the year for Napa County in 2022. We were inspired not just by her advocacy, and she's known for really advocating and making changes that calm traffic, but also because she's someone who decided to try biking in a way she hadn't before. So just a couple years ago, she was involved in one of the Bike to Work Day events, and after that, she thought, I can do this, and replaced her three trips a week to the community garden that she used to go by car with her bicycle, and she takes her gardening tools on that and everything. So we want to honor those folks and are very excited to have an American Canyon resident as one of our co-bike champions of the year. We are fortunate that so many city leaders and elected officials understand and embrace biking for its many community benefits. Of course, encouragement alone won't make biking safe, convenient, and accessible, and won't make safe routes to school. We also need infrastructure improvements that include more and better bike lanes, and bike lanes that are separated and buffered from vehicle traffic, as well as a variety of traffic calming treatments. We look forward to continuing to partner with the city and other stakeholders to continue to make this a reality. Thank you again to the City of American Canyon for proclaiming May as Bike Month.
Thank you. The proclamation for you. Karen. Yes, take this home with you. There's still something to take home.
Yes, that's fantastic.
And thank you for that. That's inspiring to people. You know, we should all do more bicycle riding.
Thank you so much.
Moving on now, proclamation recognizing May 1 to May 7, 2022 as Professional Municipal Clerk Week. Wow, this is.
Guess I'll accept that.
By all means. Oop. I got that one on the wrong page. '23rd Annual Professional Municipal Clerk Week, May 1 through May 7, 2022. Whereas the office of the Professional Municipal Clerk, a time-honored and vital part of local government, exists throughout the world. And whereas the office of Professional Municipal Clerk is the oldest among public servants. And whereas the office of Professional Municipal Clerk provides the professional link between the citizens, the local government bodies, and agencies of government at other levels. And whereas professional municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of the neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all. And whereas the professional municipal clerk services are as the information center on functions of local and government and community. Whereas professional municipal clerks continue to strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the office of the professional municipal clerk through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, and the annual meetings of their state, provincial, county, and international professional organizations. Whereas it is most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishment of the office of professional municipal clerk. Now, therefore, I, Leon Garcia, Mayor, City of American Canyon, do recognize the week of May 1 through May 7, 2022 as Professional Municipal Clerks Week, and further extend appreciation to our professional municipal clerks, Teresa Gilfus, City Clerk, and Cherry Walton, Deputy City Clerk, and to all municipal clerks for the vital services they perform and their exemplary dedication to community they represent. You know, it's one of these essential services that keeps us all on track and keeps us mindful of what we need to do. And I do really appreciate that. You know, for me, things can get busy, but no, we have a great team in American Canyon. And I would just personally like to thank you very much, and I'm sure the council expresses that as well.
Thank you. You're very welcome.
Next, proclamation recognizing May as Mental Health Awareness Month. Do you have somebody to receive this?
I do not.
We will hang on to it for appropriate.
Thank you.
Sure. Mental Health Awareness Month, May 2022. Whereas mental health challenges are one of the most common health conditions in California, affecting 1 out of 6 adults, and impacting both the persons experiencing mental health challenges and those persons who care and love the person facing challenges. And whereas early identification and treatment can make a difference to the millions of adults and youth who suffer from mental illness and can lead to recovery. And whereas people facing stigma related to mental health may feel isolated and alone. going years before receiving any help, and thus greater public awareness about mental health can change attitudes and behavior. And whereas it is critical that we create a community where everyone feels comfortable seeking support and prioritizing their mental health. And whereas a holistic approach that includes prevention, early intervention, comprehensive services is an effective way to meet the needs of individuals at risk of or have a mental illness. And as we support the shared vision of a community in which everyone affected by mental illness can get the support and care they need to live full, life-fulfilling lives. And whereas we encourage friends, relatives, and people in our community to learn the signs, support someone who is struggling with the mental illness, and help them seek help. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Leon Garcia, on behalf of the City Council of the City of American Canyon, do hereby proclaim May 2022 as Mental Health Awareness Month and call upon every Napa County resident to be an ally to individuals with mental illness and to raise awareness about the support available so that no one feels alone in their struggle. Thank you all. I think on top of the effect of COVID and isolation has left many people with a lot of mental health issues, I think. And as we come out of it, those are still lingering with a lot of people. So do what we can to support, understand people in our community. And if people are still struggling with it, there's support services out there. Please reach out. Thank you. Moving on to our agenda now. We have receive a presentation from the Napa County Animal Shelter, and there may be some questions as well or comments from the public, so we will take that after their presentation today. So welcome, please join us.
Mr. Mayor, council members, thank you for inviting us to have the presentation today.
Good to have you here.
My name is Lee Sharp, and I'm the Deputy Director of Public Works for Napa County in charge of general services, which includes the animal shelter. And with me here is Katie Ribardier, and she is our animal shelter manager. We understand that we should make ourselves relatively brief, so we're going to try to cover a lot of information. And I'll start with kind of the very basics. So the mission of the animal shelter is to serve our community by providing for a safe and healthy environment for our citizens and their animals while promoting animal welfare and education about responsible pet ownership. We provide several services: microchip and identification services for owners, rehoming and adoption services, spay-neuter assistance, dog licensing, disaster emergency services, and volunteer programs and community education. Veterinary services at the animal shelter is conducted by and overseen by a local vet in the city of Napa, and shelter programs are operated consistent with best shelter practices identified by UC Davis Shelter Medicine Program, National Animal Care and Control Association, the ASPCA, California Animal Welfare Association, and when appropriate, Napa Humane. American Canyon has been participating in the funding of the Napa County Animal Shelter and Adoption Center since 2009. So revenue for the animal shelter is generated by license, adoption, fleet fees, reclaim fees, and other services, but most revenue is through service payments by our municipal partners that utilize the shelter. That would be American Canyon, the city of Napa, the town of Yountville, and the unincorporated area of Napa County. Our total operating expenses for the past 3 years have ranged from about 1.3 to 1.5 million. And other than staffing, which is required 7 days a week, 365 days a year, even on Christmas and New Year's, we have some very dedicated animal shelter attendants. About most of the remaining expenses are medical expenses, animal feed, vet supplies, and facilities maintenance, and that makes up the majority of our budget. Contributions from American Canyon account for approximately 13 to 14% of our shelter's budgeted revenue and is roughly $240,000 a year. The shelter takes in approximately 1,500 to 2,000 animals a year, with an average daily population that we take care of about 170. The annual numbers tend to go up when there are disasters, and they did go down a bit when there was COVID. We don't really know what the post-COVID trend will be, but we have observed over the past couple of years that fewer stray animals are coming into the shelter from animal control and the general public. Our overall live release rate, which means that an animal comes into the shelter and is either reclaimed by its owner, adopted, or transferred, is between 93 to 95%, which is a relatively high percent for shelters. Specific to American Canyon, approximately 18 to 21% of the animals that come to the shelter through animal control, owner surrender, and stray drop-off come from American Canyon. About 94% of the animals that come to the shelter from American Canyon are cats and dogs, approximately half cats and half dogs. And as I mentioned before, the total number of animals coming to the shelter over the last several years has been trending in decline. So we had a high of 379 animals from American Canyon in fiscal year 2018-2019, and a low of 248 in 2021. And as of last week, there 200 animals had come to the shelter from American Canyon. So we anticipate that the number will actually go up from last fiscal year. And as of last week, about 50% of the animals coming to the shelter from American Canyon are cats and kittens that are being sheltered, and approximately 47% are dogs, puppies, with the remainder being your rats, chickens, other domesticated animals. So since COVID, I'm actually going to ask Katie to come and talk a little bit about the COVID impacts and kind of how we operated and how we're still really in a transition out of COVID, and kind of what our post-COVID plans are. So I'll ask her to talk a little bit about that, and then I'll come back and wrap it up.
So operations of shelter programs have been constrained over the past couple of years due to the COVID-19. Access to the shelter was limited to appointment only. We had to cease in-person community education events. We had very limited opportunities for volunteers to assist the shelter, with the exception of the foster program, which really ramped up and helped keep the population at the shelter low. We were also activated by the Emergency Operations Center to be available to house animals whose owners might need to isolate in a location that would not allow for pets, which required us to actively manage the population of the shelter to provide space for potential incoming pets. Secondly, our programs were also impacted because of our service providers, specifically Napa Humane, like many other businesses, needed to change their practices for spay and neuter services due to COVID and due to staffing issues. This impact both spay and neuter for the shelter's adoptable animals, as well as the service that Napa Humane offers in support with TNR efforts, trap neuter release efforts. We've spoken with Napa Humane recently, and while they are not back to their pre-COVID status, they are working diligently to increase services during critical times. At the height of kitten season, which is generally June through August, Napa Humane anticipates having additional time set aside to accommodate TNR. In addition to Napa Humane, which has historically been the only veterinary service providing low-cost spay and neuter, we've been talking with Jameson Humane about a new program that they have recently launched. Their new program will offer spay and neuter at low cost and other medical services for animal rescues and sanctuary organizations. The shelter applauds the support of the efforts of Jameson Humane, and we are hopeful that their program will be a benefit to the TNR volunteer programs conducted under the guidance of local rescue organizations. Our post-COVID plans are the animal shelter's outreach program was severely impacted by COVID. Like other organizations, we were unable to get out into the community, and we relied heavily upon social media. We are excited to begin participating in community events and tabling at pet stores again. We will be filling a vacant volunteer coordinator position, and that also goes along with community outreach. And we'll pick up on our educational efforts around microchipping pets, spay and neuter, and animal well-being. We are also working closely with our volunteers, providing training around spay and neuter, TNR, and along with that, the animal behavior modification. We'll continue to use the services of Napa Humane and have started conversations to see in the future what kind of partnership may exist for the shelter and Napa Humane, and Jameson Humane.
And I'll just close by saying that both myself and Katie have received calls from your community who are concerned about trap, neuter, release. We share those concerns related to trap, neuter, release and what services are provided in the county of Napa in terms of low-cost spay neuter. We really are constrained by Napa Humane. We have looked at other options, including, potentially flying cats to Auburn, which is the next closest low-cost spay neuter. Realistically, when we look at the cost of spay neuter, particularly for trap, neuter, release, and if it's not low cost, veterinary expenses are quite high. So we are concerned about this, and we look forward to working with your staff to try and find solutions. We understand that there's frustration about the distance between here and the city of Napa, and we do look forward to working with your staff as we begin to talk about the Napa County agreement starting in July. So we will be having those conversations soon, and we look forward to working with you.
Well, thank you for your presentation. Just for public information, what's the low-cost spay neuter for a dollar amount?
The cost amount, so for community cats, it would be $35. That includes the ear tipping, microchipping, the ear tipping vaccination, the spay or the neuter, along with like FIV, FELV testing.
Okay.
And it's interesting to note, so that's for the trap, neuter, release, but the cost even for animal shelter, animals that are come into the shelter that are adoptable, even that cost goes up to like 150? 150, and then when you talk about going to a veterinarian outside of those providing low cost, the costs are can be double or triple, or in some cases more than that.
What about placement of the animals coming in? Cats and
Pardon me?
dogs. Placement of the animals, cats and dogs coming in? You're finding homes for them, or?
So we are. So there are, when the cats and dogs come in, like I said, we have 93 to 95% live release rate. So the shelter really uses humane euthanasia only around dogs that have bitten somebody, or dogs that have severe, or dogs and cats that have severe medical and behavioral problems, and that is through an ordinance passed by the community. The community is a strong supporter of live release rates, and so those live releases are 93 to 95% of the animals.
Very good. Thank you. There's questions from city council members at this time? Councilmember Joseph?
Yes, thank you for the presentation. And I do think there's some members in the audience that'll have their own questions, but I'm just trying to get a sense of how the process works. So you're the animal shelter, but the low-cost spay and neutering is being done by Napa Humane?
Correct.
And they are cutting back because of financial reasons, or?
I think that there's overall a shortage of veterinarians available as a whole. So it's not necessarily they're cutting back on purpose. They have low staff, and I think that they have more work, more demand for their services than they can provide with their small staff. And I think it's been difficult recruiting and keeping veterinarians. I know myself as a pet owner, a lot of the vets you contact aren't taking new patients at all. So it's a pretty broad problem.
Okay, yeah, because, we've been getting concerns, and
Yes.
I'm trying to figure out what can we do to help, but it sounds like we need to find more veterinarians.
Correct. We've been working on that, and like I said, we've had a couple calls out to different vets, and they're either not taking new clients. So we're working on it actively, but there's definitely a constraint.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Washington?
Yeah, just real quick. I know you mentioned that in order to bring a cat or a dog down to the shelter, you need to have access through an appointment because of COVID. Now that COVID is kind of like selling, is it still appointment only, or can you come in for drop off?
Yeah. No appointment necessary now at this point. We have lifted that COVID restriction, so you're available as a walk-in.
Okay, and then I also noticed that on the statistics, I guess 2018, 19, 2020, American Canyon has increased in the amount of pets or cats and dogs that they've brought there. Have you seen the increase in 2021? I never did get the stats for 21.
So the actual total number of animals coming in has actually decreased across the county and in American Canyon. but the percentage in terms of what types of animals are coming in remains relatively constant, 50% dogs, 50% cats about.
Okay, and then along with Councilmember Joseph's question about getting more veterinarians, is it possible to get the veterinarians that we do have to donate some of their time, and especially for the ones who are volunteering to try to control the population of cats, for instance, because it's growing, at an extreme rate, to try to do an outreach with the veterinarians that are in our cities.
I think that's an excellent idea, and I'd be happy to work with your staff and other staff around the county to see if we can drum up interest.
Okay, but I appreciate you guys coming out and, making some awareness. I think the committee that we have in American Canyon, the ad hoc committee for the community cats, the big plan right now is to educate people, to kind of get them to understand the importance of what we need to do for the cats in our community. So thank you for coming
We're
out
looking
tonight.
forward to being back in your community again.
Yeah, and we have several residents that will be talking and speaking tonight. I'm sure that if you guys hang around, you could probably answer some of those questions for them as well.
We'll do our best.
Well, take care of that shortly. I just noticed we have some members of our CERT team here. We do, I'm being a member as well. During a disaster, we work with Jameson Humane. Could you describe your connection with that in terms of evacuation of animals, or how we handle evacuated animals?
Katie, you want to talk about CART and CERT?
Yeah. So basically, what is our relationship with?
CERT team, we have several members here.
Yeah. So basically, when a fire happens and we get activated, we work closely with like CERT and Napa CART to evacuate the animals. CERT does a lot of the training for the volunteers through the Napa CART program. We're actually working on getting our staff trained, CERT trained. So we do have a very close working relationship with them during these disasters.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I just knew that was an additional service you provide. And I just wanted to make sure that we made that connection this evening with our CERT team. We'll open it up for public questions at this time, if our presenters would stick around. Anybody has a question, please come forward to the podium. Please.
Mayor Garcia, we have some speaker cards. Would you like to call them?
Sure, yes.
Okay.
Pass them down.
I've also received written comments, so do you want me to read those first?
We'll take this comment here. Yeah.
So for
There-
the,
So you got to state your name, please.
okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Rose Negrete,
Okay.
and I did have a few questions just for the people at the Napa shelter. Is it correct that you're only taking kittens 3 to 6 months of age? And no other adult cats to be?
Because we respond, please, in
be
the mic, because
adoptable.
we're recorded. No.
We take kittens in, and when they are 6 months or younger, we do an evaluation of the kittens. We take cats in and we evaluate whether or not they are microchipped or have an identification tag, or if somebody has reported a cat as lost, and we look for the owner. If none of that is true and the cat appears healthy, then the cat is returned to its neighbor. If it's spayed and neutered, it returns to its neighborhood. If the cat is unhealthy, the cat stays at the shelter and receives the medical attention that it needs.
Okay, so in other words, cats who are unclaimed or lost and the owners have not found them are just put back into the community to fend for themselves?
Based upon best shelter practices, the estimates are that 75% of cats that are roaming cats, that are outdoor owned but outdoor, make it back home, and that the likelihood of them being found at the shelter actually decreases and potentially introduces them to other diseases or high stress situations. So we do follow that practice at the animal shelter based upon current practice, animal shelter best management practices.
Okay, so is it, I read about it on Nextdoor app. I'm on there a lot looking to help people who have problems with cats. There's somebody here in American Canyon who, an orange cat has taken residence in their backyard, and he's bullying around his own cats, and they took him down, tried to call the shelter for him to get picked up. This cat is causing the problem. And the shelter told them that there was nothing that they could do to take this cat or help with the situation. So this person is on Nextdoor asking, you know, what can I do? Who's ever cat this belongs to, the owner, please come and claim your cat. So people are complaining about these cats that are not being claimed or are just roaming around. And I hate to see them suffer. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next, I have Michelle Leahy.
I have more of a comment than I do a question for you guys. Good evening. My name is Michelle Leedy, and I am here on behalf of the Community Cats of American Canyon and the community members who want to help them. And this is done by spay and neuter. I have concerns regarding our county's only low-cost spay and neuter service provider, Napa Humane. Last week, a member of my group of volunteers received a message requesting help trapping a mother cat and her new kittens. They were all living in an abandoned car on Case Court. We set 3 traps. We got the mom and her 4 kittens, as well as another adult cat. I drove the mom and kittens to their foster home. Instead of releasing the other cat, we chose to keep him for spay or neuter services the next morning at Napa Humane. When I arrived the next morning, though, I was turned away. I was told they only had room for 1 feral cat that day, and it had already been taken. I inquired about the policy change and was told there were no allotted slots for ferals anymore. The only way a feral cat gets in is if a domestic cat appointment gets canceled or there is a no-show, and domestic cat appointments are booked solid through July. The decision whether a space or not to take a feral doesn't even take place until 9 a.m. that day. So there's no way to plan in advance. This was both frustrating and disappointing because it wasn't updated or stated on either Napa Humane's website or the shelter's community cat page. In the past, they took 10 ferals per day, no appointments, first come, first served. We still didn't know if we would get in or not, but it was worth a try. Unsure how to proceed, I reached out to my group for advice. Thankfully, the rescue that had reached out to us in the first place used their limited financial resources to get the cat into a Napa vet and get it neutered. We were fortunate it worked out this time, but it's not likely to happen in the future. We volunteers ended up driving over 50 miles over the course of 3 days to get 1 cat fixed. Hundreds of cats need this service. Recently, there has been a huge cry for help on local social media. People are seeing roaming pregnant cats or finding kittens in their yards. Community members aren't sure what to do, so they're asking publicly. What do we tell these people to do that are asking for help? Say, thanks for caring, but there's no services to help with the problem in our city? American Canyon residents are desperate for your help. If Napa Humane is no longer an option, we need to find a new one immediately. We need to understand how the Napa County Shelter contract renewal will help with this situation. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. We have other members of the public wishing to comment on this? If not, we'll take anybody online or letters.
I have Brianna Hernandez Lopez. Go ahead, Brianna.
Hello. My name is Brianna Lopez. And
Hello,
I'm a
we
part
can't
of
hear
the
you very
Napa-
well. Sorry.
Oh, can you hear me better now?
No, that's not.
Please speak up if you can.
Speak up or closer to the microphone, please.
Okay, is this better?
Not much.
Not a
Right.
lot better.
Is there any way we can boost that volume on this end?
We can't on our end.
Okay.
Brianna, can you check your volume on the Zoom?
Yeah, it says that it works, and then even my volume's all the way up. Would I be able to like text it or be able to send a message?
I don't know. I'm sorry. Go ahead with your comment. Just try to speak as loudly as you can.
Okay, I would just like to ask where your guys' plans are headed for not allowing smoking in multi-unit housing. I was asking because
Oh, this is
as
related
part of the
to
Napa Youth
this subject.
Council, hello?
I'm sorry, Brianna, are you commenting regarding the item for the Napa Humane Shelter?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, this is the time for Napa Humane. If you want to raise your hand during public comments after this item, we'll hear your item. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. I have a dial in. Go ahead, please state your name.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
This is Tammy Wong. I want to thank our Napa County Deputy Public Director and our shelter manager for coming tonight to share some information with us. I was aware of all of the information that they presented, and I would like to emphasize a couple of different areas. As a resident, I am asking each of our council members, please bring our current contract with the Napa County Animal Shelter to a council meeting for public input and review before it is approved. I had an earlier message that it was going to be an automatic renewal, and please do not do that. The lack of transparency around decisions that have been made has been very disappointing. I may have been named bike champion by the Bicycle Coalition, but I also am a champion for the cats. And some of the decisions that we have made have not been to their benefit. I understand the reasons why the Napa shelter says they're not sheltering healthy adult stray pet cats, but unfortunately, they made that decision at the beginning of 2020 without communicating that in any way to the public. They made no effort and felt they had no need to do it. So the importance is we need to get the message out to our residents that all of their pet cats need to have a collar, an ID tag, and a microchip. So if they get out, they are seen as a pet cat. And that is the number one message I am asking all of you to do on our city social media, county social media. We need to get that out there. People are unaware of what will happen to their cat if it's not chipped or ID tagged. Additionally, it's rather frustrating that the shelter implemented this strategy for stray tame cats, and they rely on the public to get them spayed or neutered. Yet, they did this without really securing any spay or neuter resources. That is super frustrating because Napa Humane does not have any allocation for feral cats. So the county is handing out spay neuter vouchers like candy. You go to Napa Humane and they're like, sorry, we can't accept this. So as a community member in American Canyon, as someone who tries to make our city the best it can possibly be, I feel like I'm in an Abbott and Costello movie. Who's spaying this community cat? As residents of our city, we need to independently assess what we want for our city. What do we want our community cat population to be? Because right now, it's growing. There's no spay and neuter services out there. So cats are out there giving birth. The mother cat can be nursing. And even while she's nursing, she can get pregnant again. We're seeing kittens as young as 6 months getting
Tammy,
pregnant.
10-second warning.
So thank you for listening to my concerns. I look forward to your response, and please include the public in future discussions. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
I have Justin Hamilton Hole.
Okay.
Go ahead, Justin.
You hear me?
Yes.
Do we have a connection?
Justin, are you there?
Yeah,
Justin, are you there?
yes.
Go ahead with your comment.
I'm gonna tell her.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We're having a problem with the audio. It's just not loud enough.
Justin, can you speak loudly into your microphone?
Is there something on the technology
Yeah,
side
with,
that can address
with all
this?
due respect to the city clerk, I think it's on our end because there's 3 callers there that we were unable to hear.
We do have DNI here. If they could just weigh in on that. Okay, Justin, go ahead again.
Now, hear me? There we go.
That's better.
I'm one child, Katie. We help them out,
Thank you.
take care of animal torture, walking the dogs, small dogs, and we help them do a lot of work there. So I'm gonna shout out with Katie. So she's doing a great job there. Thank you, Tracy. Teresa.
You're welcome, Justin.
Any other speakers?
I have no other hands raised.
Okay. Anybody else from the public to comment? I'll allow it. Just you had an opportunity, but I'll let you come back. Okay.
Good evening again, Mayor and Council. My name is Rose Negrete. I give of my time, energy, and strength to help our city of American Canyon by helping trap, spay, neuter our community cats. Recently, on April 18, 2022, on a very rainy and cold night, I responded to a post on the Nextdoor app asking for help for 4 kittens who had been born under a porch on a corner house in a dangerous location. I found this street alone to have an alarming number of starving, injured, pregnant, and kittens. How do I know they were starving? I know because I set out traps, and in that process, I caught 5 cats very effortlessly. I was not able to catch that mama cat to those kittens, so now I am bottle feeding with the help of my friends and volunteers, 4 kittens. Also on the street, there's one person that is feeding who lives directly across the street, and these cats are having to cross a very busy street just to eat. In the process, they are getting hit and they are dying. Recology has been called out on several times to come out and pick these little ones up. Recently, I saw for myself one of these little ones that had been hit and injured. He gets around on his hind legs, just dragging his legs around. And he's just suffering. At this location, excuse me, I lost my place. Regarding the little one dragging his hind legs, I can only imagine the pain that he must be in and the suffering that he is experiencing. We need help with spay and neuter services to help us end this kind of suffering. We need more resources available to us locally in our city. Please, we need your help. Would you please make sure our shelter contract has a guaranteed allocation for spay and neuter at a local vet for TNR, trap, neuter, and return, for our beloved community cats?
Thank you. Your time's up.
Oh. I respectfully would like to take a moment to ask each one of you and ponder these
I'm
questions.
sorry.
Okay.
Your time is up.
Okay, thank you. Can I just share this with you?
You could leave it on the counter.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Well, I certainly appreciate your concerns. It resonates with all of us. And well, likewise, we've had concerns as well. Any other public comment on this matter, this presentation? Well,
my name is Jamie Holder. I live on Melvin Road here in American Canyon, and I currently have 5 cats living on my property. I'm allergic to cats, so I can't have them indoors, but they're all,
please, Ray.
they all started off feral and are now quite
Your
tame.
comments are to council, please. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
They're all spayed, neutered, and we did, over 3 years, they've all been spayed or neutered. But I have empathy and sympathy for these cats, and I do see them when I drive around, and it does seem like it is a growing issue. Mm-hmm. And I know some of us have traveled to third world countries. I've been in many different countries, and if third world countries can somehow get the cats and the dogs neutered and spayed. I don't know how many of you have traveled and seen the cats and dogs all over the small towns like in Santorini, Greece, or Turkey, or Rome, or whatever. But they're everywhere, and they just lie around and don't bother anybody, and they're fed by the community, the government, morning and evening. I've even spoken to people about their programs, but they're not left to continue to breed or to disease or to get in situations like that. So there's got to be, you know, we're not a third world country. There's got to be something we can do. And I mentioned to you maybe a biannual event that we could cooperate with Napa to get all the, like my 5 feral cats, to get their collars. Maybe I don't bring the animals, but I can go register them, because you can't always catch them, but you could and take them somewhere, but you could get those devices home so that they would be identified. But it's sad, it's very sad, and there's got to be something we can do. And when I first moved here, I wanted to tie this together with isolation and wellness after COVID. One of the best things people can do is volunteer. And when I moved here in '95, the first thing I did was join the We Care Animal Society in St. Helena and walk dogs for 6 months when we moved here. And it was how I got to meet a lot of people. So maybe a program that ties wellness and walking dogs. I don't know.
Thank you for your comment. Anybody else? We'll close public comment on this matter at this time. Council, I think we have an item we can take up. Future agenda item. Explore this further.
Yes,
There was a lot of facets to what was brought up, and we need to look at that as an agenda item.
and I would agree that we probably ought to integrate that with the contract renewal that we're in the middle of looking at.
Well, that will certainly be part of it.
Okay. I would agree. Thank you.
Just my comment would be, I moved here in 2000, and I had a good neighbor. I found out all of a sudden I had 2 mama cats and 11 kittens. And some of you who are longtime residents maybe know Simone Shipman. She lived around the corner from me. And she found homes for all the kittens. So Dr. Humane got me adopted, and was able to take the 2 mamas. That was the kids were weaned by me. And took them down. There was the live release type of program they had. And then I got the daddy cat too. Well, he was pretty upset about being caught. Took you down. I'm sure they did what was necessary for that. But you know, it's grew up on a ranch, and we had a lot of cats.
It was Ribardier, Katie Ribardier, and
They were very much part of our lives. They do.
both other side.
With that respect, we'll take it up as a future agenda item before we get to that part of it. Thank you for your comment.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Katie.
We'll move on now to public comments on any items not on the agenda.
Mayor Garcia, I received written comments from Karina Cervente and Karen Brorby. And I do have one request to speak.
Yes, yes, Rick Hess. On a more positive note, I wanted to just take a moment to thank some of the city staff. I made a commitment to both the planning commissioner and to the city council when approving our Oat Hill project that I would use my best efforts to bring an affordable housing project to town. And as you can all see down the street, they've started grading the Napa Cove project, and I'm very proud of that. We're going to have 66 affordable units at a time that housing, as we all know, is much needed. But that would have never happened. The state sets really strict timeframes and guidelines, and it's an incredibly stressful short period of time to get the approvals and then be able to pull permits. And without the help of planning, Brent Cooper, William He, Public Works, Edison, Paul Wade, Mr. Bill Ross, and Jason and others, this project would have never gotten approved, would have never met the deadline. So Laura Welsh at the very end in getting those permits ready, we were literally down to the 11th hour, and without the the great cooperation and help by those city members, and I apologize if I missed anybody, but without their help, the project would have never gotten done. And so I think that the staff deserves a great deal of credit for the work that they did. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I have Jamie Holder.
And my name's Jamie Holder. I live on Melvin, where this 66 low-income housing development is coming up. And someone said here earlier in the meeting, lack of transparency. And on February 9th, the residents of Melvin Road were invited to a meeting here with council. And I have the agenda here. It's a 2-page agenda. And there were a lot of outstanding questions as it relates to the project design, the increase in crime, definitely traffic issues. And we were told at that meeting that went on for 2 hours and 25 minutes that we would have a follow-up meeting. Now, in a response that I received from Brett in another meeting I attended, we've answered all your questions. We're not having a follow-up meeting. All of us on Melvin Road have requested this follow-up meeting. The plan is to use Melvin Road as overflow parking because the parking lot for this development did not meet your qualifications for high-density housing parking requirements that are set by council. So that was waived, and they're going to allow overflow parking on Melvin Road. And we took 4 automobiles and we put them across the street as if one was parked on each side, and they don't fit. And we have video and pictures of that. But this follow-up meeting is very important to the few people that do reside on Melvin, and the unconventional road that is now going to run parallel to the tennis court. I mean, I've never, ever seen a complex facing a very busy traffic highway, and then 3 small, small community blocks back on a single busy, like we call a throughway. A lot of people use Melvin Road as an alternative way because of the traffic on 29. To build a road as a second in-out access to an apartment complex that doesn't even face Melvin Road. So you're going to have a park, tennis courts, a park, another park, and a road for people to get in and out with overflow parking in front of our homes. So I know that's a huge concern for the few of us that are here from Melvin, and we feel like we deserve that meeting. Council agreed that the lack of transparency with the residents of Melvin, I mean, I didn't get notification until January 15th that this project was even alive, and neither did several others. So I would like to see council reconsider and allow us to have that meeting. And then the last thing I'd like to say is I'm not against low-income housing by any means. In fact, I belong to a board where I'm on a steering committee within the hospitality industry of Napa County. And one of the biggest problems we're facing today is our wineries and our luxury resorts are shutting down 30 and 40% of their capacity, meaning their rooms and how many seats they can offer the public, because they don't have people to staff the jobs, because the people can't afford. We've done our own studies.
Yes.
They can't afford to live here. So if somehow you could do low-income housing, you wouldn't have to drop down to 30,500 combined income qualification. You could,
Appreciate your
you could
comments.
service people who support hospitality.
Ms. Holder,
Thank you.
you have time. Thank you.
Thank you. City staff wish to comment on that?
Not at this time, Mayor. We have provided responses, and
Okay.
if we think an additional meeting would be helpful, we'll be having that, but we provided some detailed responses already. We talked with staff about it.
All right, thank you. Any other public comment on a matter not on the agenda?
Good evening, Beth Marcus, Melvin Road, but I'm not going to talk about Melvin Road. Jamie did it. So I'm just going to talk about my water portal. As you remember, at our meeting on April 3rd, I got up here, I was so excited because I check it every day, you know. I like to make sure my little green line is getting smaller. Well, I was gone for 5 days, and I was checking it and kept showing I was using it, and I'm going, what the heck's going on? There's nobody at my house. So, long story short, it took me well over a week to get a plumber to my house, which I'm really ticked off about. Today, they replaced 50 feet of copper piping for my water leak. So I'm just here to advocate that great water portal. I like the fact that I can see it. The other thing I want to say is I want to thank Les Lawson. I know he's not here, but he always keeps his property cut. And it's right across the street from my house, and I appreciate all that he does. I think that's fantastic. It makes Melvin Road look better, and it helps for fire season. And speaking of fire season, sorry, Chief. He didn't realize this, but tomorrow is National Firefighters Appreciation Day. So I just want to say thank you to all the firemen for all they do for us. And then one last thing, Fran can't be here tonight. She asked me to say that she has an issue with the highway. She said there's 2 spots that need to be fixed. And I told her, I said, you know, it's Caltrans. She goes, I know, but you got to tell the city anyhow. One by Donaldson Way on the fast side, and over here by Walmart. So, thank you.
Thank you for your comment. We'll take note of that. Pass it on to Caltrans. Thank you, Mr. Hawley. Any other public comment at this time? Items not on the agenda? Anything online?
I do. I have Brianna Lopez.
Okay.
Go ahead, Brianna.
Hello, can you guys hear me better this time?
Yes.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, so I am a part of the Napa Youth Council, and I would like to ask you guys where your plans are headed for not allowing smoking in multi-unit apartments. I'm disappointed because we have tried to reach out to you all, and we have stopped getting responses. So if you would be able to tell me or reach out to the Napa Youth Council on the matter, we would greatly appreciate it.
Very good. Thank you. Mr. Hawley's taking note here.
I am. It's on my to-do list. That's my fault. We'll be in contact with them.
Okay. Thank you for your comment.
Thank you. I have, there's another, just a moment. I have Justin Hamilton Holt. Go ahead, Justin.
Now we can hear. Now, there we go.
We can hear you good.
Oh.
Thank you.
Oh, ooh, what just happened?
Yeah, there we go. I'm gonna make a very comment on Teresa. I think this is working good. This is like the Napa County forum room, and so I just love to hope we continue watch this Zoom on here. It's working good. So Teresa, great job.
Thank you, Justin.
Thank you. Good feedback.
Thank you. I have Karen to comment. Go ahead, Karen, if you could give us your last name.
Fritz. F-R-I-T-Z.
I'm sorry, Karen, could you repeat that?
It's Karen Fritz, F-R-I-T-Z.
Thank you. Go ahead with your comment.
I just wanted to make a comment in reference to Airbnbs. And I was just curious as to the permit process for that. And if we, do we collect hotel transient taxes on those as well? I was just curious on that one. That's
Thank
my
you.
comment.
Mayor and Council, just briefly in response, in general, Airbnbs are not allowable uses. There is a certain area of town where a use permit process can be obtained. And through that use permit process, and yes, we would collect TOT. To date, we've never issued a use permit for that sort of Airbnb type accommodation. But in the event that we did in that particular area of town, then we would.
So we have no Airbnb in that part of town which is allowed?
We have not ever issued a permit for an Airbnb,
Okay,
correct?
all right.
I think there's a difference
Oh, thank
between, we haven't issued any permits and there aren't any Airbnbs. And I think that may be where Karen is heading.
Sure.
Yeah, kind of under the radar, maybe? Yeah.
Well, I mean, we are aware, of advertisements and different websites that are offering different accommodations, sure.
All right, well, that would be easy to pick them up if they're advertising. Very good. Other
Okay,
comments?
thank you.
Yes, I have Sylvia Regaldo Zacloid. Sylvia, go ahead.
Hi, good evening. My name is Sylvia Regalado Zaclod, and I have been a resident here in American Canyon since 2012. I wanted to share this evening some concerns that I have as a longtime resident and in terms of our city, the overall transparency that sometimes is afforded to residents with regards to decision making. It's really hard for persons like myself who are involved in our schools and are trying to be involved in our communities and find the time to also be engaged in city council to keep updated with everything that's going on. I think the newsletter goes a long way weekly to give some key highlights. But one of the major concerns that I've had recently is, the transparency around what's going on in the Levine neighborhood with regards to the assessed taxes potentially being increased. I know that a year ago, there was some talk about how, in terms of the overall budget, wanting to use some of those tax generated dollars to support all of American Canyon. There are a number of things in our community that need to be fixed. I have done some initial outreach to city staff with regards to traffic calming concerns that I have for our students around our schools. I also have great concerns with regards to how we are planning the future of American Canyon. I know council members have talked about really making this a community, a tourist destination, and not just, where people come to rest their heads at night in a bedroom community. And a lot of the planning that takes place really doesn't speak to that. And I'd like to be able to have, plans that are really starting to achieve some of that. I think that we've been a city a long time now. I think that we've had leadership for a while, that we should be making greater strides. And so I encourage you to, potentially look at how we can further expand communication and involvement from residents, especially given all of the multiple ways in which people, I think, need to be involved and a part of this decision-making process and stakeholders. And that should be something that is as important to you as it is to some of the residents that are able to be there in person. And if it means holding meetings or workshops like not workshops, but meet and greets like you've done in the past, especially as COVID restrictions are lifting and people are getting more comfortable, I would encourage you guys to continue to do that. Because I think that people are really looking at getting involved and sharing their perspectives and solutions in order to
Sylvia,
help
you have 15 seconds.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for your comments. Certainly, we appreciate that. And council certainly is looking for all avenues to increase contact with community and get community input. So appreciate your comment. Anybody else?
Thank you. I have no other hands raised.
Okay. Seeing no other comment for items not on the agenda, I'll close public comment this moment, and we'll move on in our agenda. Next item is agenda changes. Any agenda changes, council? If not, next up would be the consent calendar, and I'll accept a motion to accept that.
I'll make a motion to accept the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Motion second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Joseph?
Yes.
Councilmember Oro?
Yes.
Councilmember Washington,
Yes.
Mayor Garcia.
Yes.
Thank you.
Council. Moving
Mayor
on.
and Council,
now
just real quickly, the new microphones that we have an on and off button, and speaking into them, if you haven't already figured out how to push the buttons, is helpful. We're not always hearing the dialogue.
When I made the motion, I forgot to push the button. You can hear me now, though, right?
Now I can hear you. We're trying out the new
This technology is working a lot better. Thank
Muscle
you.
memory is going to be built up over time here. I'm going to get this right.
We'll get the hang of it. Thank you. There's no public hearing this evening. We'll move on with our business item. Item number 12 on the agenda, Enhanced Solid Waste Services and Rates, SB 1383.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and City of American Canyon community. We're here this evening. I have Derek Nelson, General Manager for Ecology, Vallejo, and myself, Erica Almond-Smithies, Public Works Director for the city. We're here to talk about the enhanced solid waste services and rates required for the new state mandate SB 1383. We have a small, short slideshow here tonight. I'm going to let Derek take lead on it and chime in on some of the items that the staff's recommendations are for later this evening. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Erica, for that introduction, and good evening, Mr. Mayor, council, and staff. Just want to start by saying thank you for having us here, and we're honored to be your service provider and a community partner.
Well, good evening, welcome.
Thank
On occasion, met you in Vallejo.
Yes, yeah, I've met several of you at different events throughout in our community and on Zoom and council meetings earlier in this year and last year. Hopefully this video plays, but I think this video does a really good job at articulating 1383 and
Climate change is no longer the future.
It's completely engulfed, and it is hot.
It's already here.
California is hitting a fearsome milestone. We're experiencing temperatures, world record-breaking temperatures in the state of California, 130 degrees.
We're seeing bigger wildfires, stronger storms, and devastating droughts.
I'm standing currently 40 feet underwater, or should be. Today, we are advancing a drought emergency.
With both the state and here at CalRecycle, we're doing something about it. SB 1383 is the biggest change to happen in waste management in over 30 years. The new super pollutant reduction strategy rules for organics recycling and edible food recovery are part of California's bold effort to fast-track climate progress by reducing the most potent climate superpollutants like landfill methane emissions. Food, fiber, wood, and other organic waste materials make up the largest material types landfilled in California every year. When organic waste material decomposes, it emits methane, a short-lived climate superpollutant 84 times more potent than carbon dioxide, and a major contributor to climate change. California's short-lived climate pollutant reduction law calls on the state's 40 million people, its businesses, and every level of government to reduce landfill methane emissions by achieving a 75% statewide reduction in organic waste disposal by 2025. The law also requires actions to make sure at least 20% of currently disposed edible food is redirected to Californians who don't have enough to eat. The state is encouraging cities and counties to start planning now.
There is a need for more infrastructure to process food waste.
To provide organics collection services to every resident and business in the state, and to connect grocery stores, restaurants, schools, state agencies, and other large food suppliers with local food recovery organizations to feed people, not landfills. In addition to putting more food on the table, the law will reduce pollution and greenhouse gases, the equivalent of taking nearly 2 million cars off the road for a year. By using innovative methods to make and use compost, we'll create things like biofuel and electricity and turn depleted dirt back into nutrient-rich, water-retaining soil. Building the next generation of recycling infrastructure will create about 17,000 green jobs of the future. Ambitious goals, putting California in a much better position to protect the health of our people and our planet.
The really big solution here is taking on the climate crisis.
Because because it's still possible, I think, to avoid the worst outcomes.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think that video does a better job at, articulating the need for 1383 than I could up here talking about methane emissions and everything. But in order for the city to be 1383 compliant, there's a few things that have to be done. This slide kind of illustrates those items. The biggest thing is that we need to allow organic material collection for all customers, which would include food waste. 1383 also requires that all newly delivered carts and containers meet specific color and labeling requirements. We're currently compliant with that. And 1383 also requires jurisdictions to complete route reviews, meaning that each hauler's route must be audited annually by flipping the lid and doing a surface inspection for contamination and documenting the results of those inspections. If there is contamination noted, they have also a responsibility to notify the customer. Also, 1383 requires that jurisdictions conduct annual outreach and education, touching on 7 specific points in 1383. And the outreach and education may be conducted through print or electronic media. And then lastly, this isn't a requirement of 1383, but a recommendation for the city to add a recycling coordinator. And so we put together 6 options and compared those to the current rates. And I'll walk through these options. Option 1 is the baseline minimal service that Recology must provide for the city to be 1383 compliant. And this kind of corresponds with the 2 items that are check marked on this previous slide here. That's just basic residential food waste collection for all customers, as well as the color compliant carts and labeling. All of the other options will include option 1 as a baseline, but then add additional features to those options. Option 2 includes food waste, but also includes an increase in franchise fees. We currently pay 6% in franchise fees, and we're proposing an increase to 6.9% in franchise fees. And this would cover a half-time employee to serve as the city's recycling coordinator. Option 3 also includes food waste, but includes an increase in franchise fees from 6% to 8.2%, and that would cover an FTE to serve as the city's recycling coordinator on a full-time basis as opposed to half-time. And then option 4 does not include any franchise fee changes, but does add outreach and education as well as route reviews to be conducted by Recology rather than the city. And then option 5 includes options 1 and 2 and 4, which are the half-time employee and the outreach and education. And option 6 are options 1, 3, and 4, which is the full-time employee with outreach and education. And I have these here compared to our current residential rates. And I'd like to also point out that the staff recommendation is option 3. So here are a couple of comparisons. Pardon me. Yeah, so here are a couple of comparisons from surrounding jurisdictions compared to the staff recommendation. And as you can see, American Canyon has very competitive rates compared to the surrounding areas. I'd also like to point out that with the acceptance of organic material in the green carts, residential customers may have the ability to downsize. Many of them have 64 or 96 gallon carts. When they migrate that material from their green carts into their, from their gray carts into their green cart, they can have the potential to downsize their gray cart. And then lastly here on this next slide is just a comparison of the current residential rates compared to the baseline, which is the minimum that we must do to be 1383 compliant, and then also with the staff recommendation in option 3. You want to take next steps?
So this evening, we're looking to get direction or consensus from City Council on these different rate structures. This is before, at a minimum, we have to do with the first step, which is implementing the residential rate increase to capture the organic, whether that's city covered through general fund, or we go with the rate increase through the the customers, which is subject to the Prop 218 process. So we would get consensus tonight, that's the goal. Or if you want us to follow up again and come back to council. But if we were to reach consensus tonight with City Council, we would come back on the June 7th meeting to set the hearing date and get a formal action of direction from City Council, and then set the 45-day hearing process, which the earliest meeting would be August 2nd, and then hopefully reach consensus or approval of that public hearing that evening, depending on how many protest votes we get. And hopefully during that entire time, concurrently, we can reach any other terms with Recology on their agreement, such as any terms, extensions, and addressing whether we go to a CPI or water, sewer, trash increase rate, incremental rate on that on their contract. So there were questions coming up before this meeting on what the staff member would be doing. Part of that was all brought up in our ordinance that was brought to council and adopted in November of 2021. It's a long list of requirements. The reason why we wrote with the recommendation for number 3, which is the full-time staff member, as they would probably be able to do the route reviews and the public outreach with our communications team here at the city internally, or we could increase that and tack on to what Recology already does successfully as well with their team. But we thought the full-time staff member would be able to cover the extensive demand that this new mandate, unfunded mandate from the state, is going to be on the city. We have not only agreement negotiations, we have to schedule, ensure all regulatory requirements are completed, ensure all franchise reporting, collection requirements are completed. Roadway sweeping is included in Recology's contract, so this person would be able to help assist in monitoring that and respond to Derek and his team when it's not getting swept or any problems we're having. Coordinate with the county and our regional partners. We've been able to, we lost our full-time environmental specialist a year ago that assisted with the solid waste program. So we've been really kind of leaning on our partners, our regional partners, the county and the city of Napa, on helping us get through this past year, as well as some consulting work. We really do not know the demand on how many hours per week it's going to really take this person to deliver this. Enforcement actions start at the end of December, or I think the beginning of 2024, so or 2024. So we're getting, right now we're in the implementation period, and we're behind on the implementation. It's supposed to be January 1 of this year. So the council, as you know, in December we did the notice of intent to comply with the state. But this is part of that step forward. We have to get our rates adjusted and then implement SB 183 with the carts, the new carts, collecting the residential. We already do our organic collections with the commercial sites. That's why it's really a residential hit to the rates. And so that's already included in their contract. In addition, we're doing that countywide food recovery study where we're partnering with the county. They're taking lead on it. That's another item that we don't know what that lift's going to be. So that the recycling coordinator or environmental specialist will be taking part in that and helping coordinate all those activities. So there's lots of reporting throughout the year. There's grants that come up, Cal Recycle grants. So is it going to be a 40-hour-a-week job? Is it going to be more than that? That's what we're still gauging at this time.
Very good. A couple of things on that came to mind. Non-compliance. So there's a lot of communities are having issues coming up to speed on this, as we all know. What's the outcome of non-compliance? Penalties, fines to the city? What?
That's what they keep telling us. I happen to be at a conference in March.
Yeah.
And the deputy director of Cal Recycle was there, and we're still working through it, all the mandates and the requirements. The threat's there that they could fine us, but we don't know what that looks like yet. I don't know if Derek has any.
I'm not aware of what the exact number is, but I've heard the same thing, that fines will be imposed on jurisdictions.
At what level of non-compliance does it take effect? I mean, we don't know that either, I'm assuming.
We do not. There was only about 100 submittals for the notice of intent to apply that I was told in March. And there's over 400 agencies in the state of California. So that was interesting news to hear.
Wow. That's not helpful.
No.
I don't understand how to make it. Just to understand, no, currently the green bin is for green waste or vegetable waste. When you say food compliance, now you have things like meat products, et cetera.
Yeah, correct. Basically, anything that is biodegradable can go into the green bin. So you would have your food waste. You can have soiled papers.
Yeah.
You know, like a pizza box that has cheese stuck to it. All of those types of things are compostable and can go into the green cart.
So from a health and safety perspective, when you have meat waste, then you get maggots. How do we handle that?
Yep. So that's an excellent question. And so there's a lot of things that can be done. What I found as most effective is a lot of times people will freeze their food and set that in their cans on service day. So, you know, whatever food scraps you have left, if maggots are a concern, rather than putting it in the garbage or the organic can all week so it can sit and heat and rot.
Multiply.
Yeah, put it in your freezer, wrap it in a paper bag, and then on garbage day, just dump it in your green cart.
So that goes into the same green cart that the green waste goes into?
Correct.
All right. You may be aware of our old landfill here. Generated a lot of methane for a while. I think I forgot how many thousand homes that served. But that's, as I understand it, it's an anaerobic process. Oxygen-free air produces the microbe that generates methane. There's some process like that.
Yeah. So
how does the system plan on addressing that?
How does it address the methane that it produces?
Yeah. How do you keep from generating methane with the new process?
You know, I honestly don't know the answer to that question, but I can get back to you.
All right. Because, you know, it's when you seal it all up, and apparently that creates an environment where methane gas is generated. That's wiping out the problem.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure. I mean, I'm a home composter for years and years and years. It's all the vegetable waste. Might be an occasional spoiled loaf of bread or something that's in there. But the meat product doesn't go in that. It goes in, right now it goes in my gray can in a bag sealed up. Yeah. So now you're saying we put all that in the green can.
Correct. All of that in the green can without a bag.
Without a bag.
You can use a paper bag, but no compostable plastics or no plastics.
Right. Well, that increases the salt content in compost, which makes it very hard for gardening. So, yeah, sometimes.
And they just, you know, they add amendments to the compost, and you know, there's people that are monitoring what's inside and making sure that it's good for gardening.
They got a great process here. I've gone over. We're avid gardeners, so those of us that do that, we go over $12 for a cubic yard that will fill up a pickup truck bed.
Yeah.
That's a great price.
And we've implemented this same program in other jurisdictions. You know, San Francisco, one of the pioneers in this, Sonoma Marin, I came from there. Right. We had the program successfully rolled out there, so it's a doable program.
All right. Well, I think I would like to know more about how you avoid generating methane unless you're just turning it over a lot, aerating it. So, with that, I have Council Member Oro.
Yeah, thank you. So, Mr. Mayor and the rest of the council, I'm going to suggest something that the city managers have been suggesting to us, to ask clarifying questions here before we get into a discussion, so we can allow public comment for ahead of this. I don't know if she's had that discussion with you, but I want to ask just a couple clarifying questions, and then I have some stuff with discussion after public comment. I think it's because I want to hear what the public has to say before we go into discussion, and I hadn't thought about that before, and I think it's valuable to have their input before we clearly deliberate. So I just have one question on this. The environmental specialist or the recycling coordinator, the staff report says it both ways. We have to have one or it's optional. I want to clarify, is that actually mandated by the law? It was unclear to me in the staff report.
Sorry about that for not the clarification. We need to have someone in staff resources to be designated to the solid waste program. Right now, like I said, we've been kind of getting away, riding the coattails of our neighbors with getting our ordinance across the line, some of our no tents to comply. I actually worked with Vallejo initially when I came on board last year, and then I started working with the city of Napa and the county of Napa on getting our ordinance for the last year, and a consultant. We should have someone in-house. Recology can't take on that position.
But it's not mandated, is what?
Not mandated.
Okay, that's all I need to know.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Washington.
Yeah, Derek, thanks for that presentation. And I just wanted to start off the green button. I got the button. Derek, thank you for that presentation. I'll get used to it. I want to start off by saying we need to set ourselves up for success. And when I look at the outline that you provided, I immediately leveraged someone from my day job who is also in EH&S to kind of give me some understanding and some of his perspective. And I saw like an option 1, option 2, where we're talking about half-time employees. And my EH&S person just told me a couple of simple, or asked me a couple of simple questions. He says, look, you run our program. How would you run our program with a half an employee to do this? Especially in this type of environment where you need a environmentalist. And then you start thinking about an environmentalist. Where are you going to find an environmentalist that only wants to work 20 hours a week? You're not going to find it. So you get what you pay for. And, you know, I look at the difference here where it says 6.9 versus 8.2. You're talking a difference of 1.6 to have a full-time person. And to Councilmember Oral's point, I don't want to go on to the data. I'm a data-driven guy. Councilmember Joseph will tell you that. But I went into the data, and I actually can say that I think the staff did a real excellent job doing what they did as far as a recommendation, because I cross-checked it with some people from my profession, and you know it made sense because they broke it down to me. It took them a long time, about an hour and a half today, to kind of like break it down to me. And I know we don't have that much time this evening to talk about it, but I want to say first that excellent presentation. I think it's something that we need to be serious about and plan to be successful in the plan, and not just try to look dollars and cents right now. We got to look at the future, how we plan on making this a successful project. That's all.
I appreciate the comments and agree with the staff's recommendation for a full-time employee. If you look at options 4 and actually option 4, which is just doing the outreach and education and the route reviews, I believe Jason and Erica's intent was that they can hire a full-time staff and they can take that on, as well as all of the other state required reporting that's required, the ever-changing laws and other things that, you know, it is a full-time job to keep up with.
Oh, and if I can also mention, my person that I leveraged today did tell me about all the regulations and gave me a book to read, and I'm like, I'm not going to do it. So you need somebody that has that environmental background.
Title 14 is probably about
affirmative.
Yeah.
No. Very good. Councilmember Joseph.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. So under option 3, we would have a full-time person, and then that city position would do all the paperwork, do the outreach and route reviews, and, well, I guess those would be the main components. Or I'm trying to clarify, to use Councilmember Oro's suggestion, what our options are.
There's also permit waivers. Certain like multifamily housing may be allowed to have a permit waiver. Commercial operators, permit waiver from the organic. They do not have the room on site for individual bins. Like we did some additional research, like Vintage Ranch, the apartment housing has individual bins. They don't have consolidated. So they probably wouldn't be able to do a permit waiver, but that's a whole nother level, like with part of the development side of the house. So they being part of our weekly, probably our public review, plan review meetings. They would also be the one enforcing. They'll be doing the inspections, inspections of commercial generators and residential generators, and following up when they're not in compliance. They'll be sending the letters out to customers and assisting with the public outreach. So we're not in that pattern of bad behavior where everyone's getting on the good side and knowing how to sort that's been all in the long, everyone knows recycling, it's always changing and making sure we're putting the right items into our different bins. And that's always a struggle. There'll be a forever ongoing struggle, but that person will be in charge of doing those reviews.
So we're going to, because that was the next area of questioning. The process is focusing more on the residential, you said, because the commercial's already doing that, or not?
So we already have a commercial rate for organic. So we have several commercial customers in American Canyon that already have organic service, but there's 0 residential customers because the franchise and the rate don't support organic collection in the residential customer base.
Okay. And getting to the residential, other than the meat scraps, or, you know, it seems like it's just a matter of, instead of putting it in the gray one, you put it in the blue or the green one. That seems like it should be relatively easy to educate. The food scraps, I agree with the mayor that, you know, leaving that in for 5 or 6 days just sounds like a problem. On the other hand, freezing your food scraps for 5 or 7 days sounds like something a lot of people are going to think twice about doing. So, you know, I think there might be some issues in compliance, but then we get into the issue of, we're going to have a full-time person who periodically will look into your garbage bins and say, you know, why have you got X that ought to be in Y?
So they don't have to, so the 1383, the law requires what they call contamination minimization audits. And so it's a jurisdiction responsibility that each hauler route on an annual basis will have to have a percentage at a random selection of lids flipped open. They're not, you know, moving things around or lifting stuff up and digging through it, but just a surface level inspection, noting any contamination. And they're looking in the garbage can for food waste. They're looking in the recycle can for non-recyclables, and in the organic cart for non-organics. They have to document those reports. Those reports will be required to be submitted to CalRecycle on a every so often basis. And they also have to notify the customer either through a letter in the mail or a tag on the cart if there's contamination found.
Now, on the other hand, is there a way that when your trucks come and unload, that there's a way to kind of test what's in there so you can almost validate at the end, regardless of how we did it, you know, the contaminations were marginal or within range? I guess where I'm coming from is, to me, I would want to look and say, if you have a truckload full of organics that are all, you know, reasonably okay, you're in compliance, regardless of how individuals did it, because I'm sure there's a certain tolerance. But it sounds more like, instead of just figuring out the output was acceptable, the state would like us to periodically check and see if residents are putting their garbage in the right box.
Correct. That's exactly how the law is written.
I just have this uncomfortable feeling that people might not appreciate that. And then it kind of bothers me that we're going to spend a lot of money hiring somebody to do that, which means they aren't going to appreciate that person and what they're doing. So maybe philosophically, this seems like we're setting ourselves up for a lot of grief. But I'm just trying to clarify things right now. The last comment you made is that you have implemented programs like this elsewhere. Based on that, what do you think's the easiest way to make it work, and how we should proceed?
So, you know, outreach and education is important. And believe it or not, those audits are also important because, you know, it helps correct behavior, and it doesn't have to be an aggressive approach with a mean red sticker on the cart. Just letting people know politely, hey, this goes in the wrong cart. You know, I do that in my house all the time with my kids. Oh, yeah. They probably get tired of hearing it, but it helps to change the behavior. And, you know, as adults, we're no different.
And to that extent, it is true, because I was peripherally involved in recycling, 40 years ago in the city of Fresno. And what was recyclable at that point and what is available now has changed, yet I'm pretty sure I was living under the theory that, no, that's not recyclable because it wasn't 40 years ago. And so I might need a little educating myself, but it's going to be interesting to see how this thing unfolds. Because at the other end of this, the idea of beefing up the amount of composting we can have, creating this biomass, anaerobic energy and all that good stuff is exactly what we need to do. And I think the objective of keeping all those organics out of the landfill is the answer to the mayor's question. When it's not in the landfill, it's not producing methane, and that's the solution. So get it composted and turned into some kind of synthetic energy, and the world is a better place. But it's the nuts and bolts of this law that I think might be a challenge. But those are my clarifying questions.
And Mr. Mayor, to kind of, I'm thinking back to your question, I don't know the science behind how, composting does not produce methane, but I do know that compost helps with carbon sequestration, and it will actually pull carbon out of the air and into the compost, also helping with greenhouse gases.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions from council? Ready for public comment?
Yes.
Public comment on this matter? Anybody from the attendees?
Beth Marcus, but I'm not going to tell you my address because you might check out my garbage.
There you go.
No, I just want to ask, how I know Recology gets money for all the composting that you could do, but why do we have to pay more rates, higher rates, when you guys get more money than we do? Sure.
So believe it or not, we actually have to pay for the composting. So currently with the green waste cart, we're paying about $51.85 a ton to compost the green waste. Trash right now, we're paying $70 a ton. And as we move to organic waste, because of the complexity with food, as you guys have pointed out, it's at $70.75 a ton. So it's actually more expensive to process this material than it is to just kind of bury it in a hole, because there's a process involved where we're turning the material over, we're watering it, we're monitoring temperatures. There's a lot involved, and the majority of that expense is we're paying someone else to do all of that processing for us.
Right. Any other question, comment from the public?
Cindy Biederman, American Canyon. Part to that question is, but you're not putting it in a hole, you're selling it. So you think you would get a little bit of offset of that, correct?
We, Recology, American Canyon, do not get any of that.
Oh, someone's getting it. Thank you.
Any other questions from attendees? Anybody online or? Mm-hmm.
I have Justin Hamilton Hole.
Oh, now everybody hear me. My question is, I have a old garbage can. I did talk to Erica a long time ago. She say that we're probably get new can. When we get update new garbage can? Thank you.
I'm not familiar with any rollout of new carts, but if you reach out to our office and your cart is in disrepair, we can exchange it, no problem.
I remember a year ago that you guys did that, and we had a truck come down here, and we trade the update colors or something.
I can, if you want to reach out to the office, have them patch you through to me, and I can talk to you and get your cart situation straightened out.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. I have no other hands raised.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Moving forward, council.
Yeah.
Go Councilmember Oro?
Yeah. We're not yet done yet, Mr. Nelson. Game's not over. It's just a new process here.
All right.
Thought I could breathe.
So if we can we bring up back the slides for the public view here, because I'm very cognizant of the fact that everything is going up in price. And, you know, a lot of that is in the world that we live in with inflation happening now. This seems to be separate from that, and it's actually mandated by the state and adding another cost to citizens. Can we go to slide, the current residential rates, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? And these are based, explain to me the 6.9% franchise fee. What does that mean?
So we currently pay a 6% franchise fee. So all revenue that comes in from American Canyon, we pay back to the general fund 6%. So to pay for the either half-time or full-time employee, it would result in either a 6.9 franchise fee, which would equate to about $75,000 for the 6.9, or an 8.2, which is really just an increase of 2.2% on the franchise fee, which would be $150,000.
Yeah. And then the reality in these other places, do you have any data on where this has been implemented? How many people have actually moved down to a 32 gallon from a 64? Because I'm sitting here with a family of 5. I'm like, that's going to be a lot of food going into that green bin.
Yeah. So I don't have metrics and data with me, but I have experience that I can speak to. In San Francisco, their standard residential cart is a 16 gallon. So half of the size that we have here with 32s, and that's purely through composting and recycling and migrating material outside of that cart. You know, because most of you, I'm sure your green waste can is not full every day, you know, or every week. It's very minimal. So if you look at the amount of compostable food that you have in your homes, I mean, not compostable food, but just the organic material, paper towels and all those other things that are biodegradable, and you no longer put those in your garbage can, you'll be surprised in how much it shrinks, and you can potentially easily get down to a 32. Like I said, San Francisco, their standard is a 16.
Yeah. Can you go to the next slide, please? This is comparing other cities. Are these comparing other cities outside of, have they implemented the, what are we calling this, food waste?
1383. So I can't speak to all of them. I believe there's a mixture. These were rates as of March 30th of this month. I can speak to Vallejo next door. These are pre-1383 rates for Vallejo.
Okay. So even if we were to take staff's recommendation here and get the full-time employee, and let's just call these existing rates without the SB, what are we calling it again? I'm sorry.
1383.
1383. Those rates will probably go up. The rest of the cities on that will probably go up as well to meet the 1383 requirements.
Correct. If they haven't done their 1383 already, as I mentioned, then the processing that material is more expensive than it is to bury it.
This is the slide you show when you raise your rates to the city of American Canyon. Listen, I'm in agreement that you're going to need a full-time employee. This is going to be one of those programs where they actually, we don't know what's going on or how it's going to work or what law is going to be amended or applied or created. And I know that we couldn't do this with our hands tied behind our back with just doing it on a piecemeal basis. A little concerned, too, a little bit about the enforcement angle on this. I feel like this is almost a code enforcement law. Is it like something that we need to create under that, or is it a public works thing? Where does this role fit into this whole process?
It's sort of like the stormwater regulations. It falls under Public Works currently. We're talking about bringing the environmental series back together again under the Maintenance Utilities Department, probably in July 1st. But it's not really under whose hat it is. It's a matter of where does it best fit, and it is environmental. I think Councilmember Washington spoke to that. It is environmental, like stormwater. That was the environmental specialist we had previously was stormwater and solid waste. This seems a little bit more to be more full-time than just stormwater was in the past. So the enforcement, I would see it's similar to would be like that we do now for when we have the inspections for our grease interceptors. That's what kind of we were doing before. We actually had 3 different people going into our commercial businesses. We had Recology doing audits, we had Public Works doing an audit for solid waste, and we had grease traps being audited by wastewater. So we had 3 different audits. So if you had one person designated to start doing that for commercial and residential, instead of having the businesses impacted and residents won't be impacted too much because it's going to be an audit on the route. It's not going to be going into their business. It'll be nice that we'll have symmetry as far as one person from the city going to these businesses at the same time and maximizing that inspection at that time.
Okay.
So it's going to be kind of already what there are roles that we do now, is in other words what I'm trying to say.
And the more I look at this, the more I think you guys, maybe we come at this a different way. We're not raising the rates. It's an opportunity for you to lower your rates.
Lower cost, yeah.
Because the total cost, if I can get my family down to a 32-gallon, which means almost like every food and paper product that's going to go in there, it sounds like I could probably get down to a 32-gallon. It's just the actual cost is training me and everybody else to actually put something into that green bin that's not a yard clipping. Thank you.
Councilmember Joseph.
Yes, I'd like to ask a couple of other questions and a couple of comments. Number one, Councilmember Washington and I just heard a presentation about Napa City's biomass project, where they're trying to take advantage of all the excess wood from dead trees to construction debris and so on, and turn it into either compost or biochar and all that. So getting to the point where you're spending $77 a ton for stuff, as Ms. Biederman pointed out, somebody's making some money off of this. And the question I have is, are we looking at any opportunities locally to say, if there's enough of us with enough garbage, is it economically viable to do something home-based instead of necessarily being stuck essentially paying to get rid of it? So that's the first issue, to kind of look regionally at what the options are. And that may not necessarily be Recology's mission, it might be ours with this new staffing. So that's the first issue. Let's start thinking about whether there's an economy of scale and whether it makes some sense from that perspective. The second one is, you know, if we do this rate adjustment and people do switch from 64 or 96 to 64 or 32, that's going to impact your revenue stream. So have you calculated, you know, some expectation of you can take a hit of so many units before you come back to us and say, okay, everybody's really doing a bang-up job and we want to raise your rates? We do that occasionally on droughts and water rates. So I understand the sensitivity to it when we ask you to do something and then say, you know, thank you, now you have to pay more. So that's my biggest concern, is that you can absorb that kind of shift without coming back to us. That one I'll stop for you to answer.
So I'll start with the first one, with looking for an alternative to the current composting process. You know, people can do home composting and backyard composting, as Mr. Mayor said he does. But as pointed out in that video, California's infrastructure isn't really set up for every jurisdiction to even meet this standard. And so at American Canyon, we're lucky that we have the capacity dedicated to us so that we can take advantage of it. And it's, you know, highly recommended that we do. Your second question regarding, you know, our rates and the impact on revenue, that's a tough question. You know, if it's, just to be honest, we have to be able to pay to put fuel in these trucks, as you guys all are experiencing the fuel increases and just freight in general. buying a vehicle, and all those things add up. And so if we can't afford to operate the business, that we would have no choice but to ask for a rate adjustment.
Okay. And then the last one is kind of piggybacking off of what Councilmember Oro was saying on the staffing and what our Public Works Director was saying. And it does seem to me that I don't know, I hope there isn't a full-time job here, maybe there is, but there's bits and pieces of other jobs, and that if you do start rethinking the environmental specialist position, to broaden that job description in a manner that allows you to, get involved in all the things from storm drains to recycling to grease traps. Try to take advantage of the opportunity to rethink how you do things, to do it more efficiently and effectively. And maybe there is kind of a code enforcement, so we do have our code enforcement person who probably doesn't want to be involved in any of this. But, I'm just suggesting that somehow if you have enough warm bodies, you'll have the capacity to do things above and beyond just complying with 1383. It is an unknown, so you don't know if it's a lot of work or whatever, but theoretically, maybe it'll settle down and you can still have that capacity to take on other projects that are critical. So I'm just seconding Councilmember Oro's remarks that maybe we take advantage of this opportunity to do something organizational too. All right, well, thank you. Unless you wanted to comment.
That was part of the reasoning between the half-time and full-time, because originally it was split. It currently is split, stormwater and solid waste. Not exactly down the middle, because we have hazardous waste too. But that was the idea, like, I wanted to see what was the rates? What's the rates with the half-time, full-time employee, and what's the difference between the full-time? And like you said, it's incremental. It's very incremental. So it made sense to go the next route up.
And just to put a plug in, somewhere down the road, there might be kind of an environmental element of dealing with climate change and the implementation of a climate action plan, that this classification might be asked to take on some of those rules too.
And this city's growing.
Yeah, okay.
Certainly fits in with climate action as well, methane reduction. That's what this is about. Councilmember Oro?
Yeah, can you go to the last slide, please? The next step slide. The next step slide. There you go. So in this process here, I think this is a rate change conversation. I hope you guys don't view it that way. You're asking for feedback tonight. At every step of that process, I think there's an education process of what this means. What can go into that green bin? It's kind of confusing because it's kind of, we've been told for the last 25 years, ever since recycling's been done, or probably 40 years now, that we've been doing it in California, that it's been very restrictive what goes in there, and it was just yard waste. This is an opportunity for us to really tell a story of that there could be so much more in there, and particularly on that composting side, because it's not as clear. It's just going to take a while for people to get it.
Mr. Hawley, do you have a comment?
Thank you, Mayor. I only just wanted to add, conceptually, as we talk about this position, what we were envisioning was looking at the environmental specialist job classification we already have, broadening some of the language if it's not already in there. But the intent is not to create a single class position at a relatively lower level, wanting to have broad flexibility to be able to cross-train, to be able to rotate assignments and that sort of thing. So although this position would focus primarily on solid waste, we didn't want to create a solid waste person. What we wanted to create was flexibility within the existing environmental specialist classification, folding in some of this more contemporary language, and providing that flexibility for other hazardous waste, for stormwater and other sustainability programs. So that's the intent.
And it also allows for workload adjustments. There may be 2 or 3 specialists focused on solid waste because it's crazy, but in a year or two it could settle down and you can reallocate. So the idea of having not a generic, but a more generic environmental specialist position makes sense. It gives you some flexibility and so forth.
That was all. Thank you, Mayor.
Good. Well, Council, I think if we We haven't had sufficient discussion on it. We're to provide direction regarding enhanced solid waste services. Rate required. I think we have an option here that's recommended. We have a calendar by which to approach this in terms of public hearing, et cetera.
I would certainly agree with Councilmember Oro. Whenever we discuss this, we have the slide that shows the proposed rates versus everybody else's, because other than Benicia, I think we're less, even with option 3, we're less than everyone, I think, except Benicia, and if they haven't done their updates, we might be less than them too. So as much as people won't appreciate the rate increase, it is relatively less than everybody else. And we have been blessed with relatively low solid waste rates for quite some time.
Yes.
So,
Well, in addition to that, I want to make sure that the education part of it is as well, not just the rates, but actually what goes.
oh, absolutely.
what makes it successful.
That's the whole point of the exercise, really.
Education leads to compliance. So, yes.
They'll give you stickers, pictures on it.
Interestingly, as we start gearing up for the Meet Me in the Street series later this summer, that probably becomes one of the real big opportunities. You know, there were lots of opportunities to show a lot of food waste from that event can end up now in the green containers, and also just sharing the information. It's a collection of folks gathering, you know, all in one place. So we certainly will have a presence there, and I think that'll be a prime opportunity for us.
Council agreeable to moving forward with the recommendation? Option 3.
Do you need a motion to that effect, or?
No, I think we can kind of read the tea leaves, and the general consensus is, you know, option 3 seems palatable. We need to focus on education. We need to focus on, you know, this is as much about an opportunity as it is about a rate increase, and it really is. You know, I think Derek made the best point. The green waste right now is 20% full. Most of the yards in American Canyon aren't particularly large anyway, so unless it's leaf season, you know, that's the one that could have been 8 or 16 gallons usually. So it's, you know, it's the larger one, and there are more things that can go in there. And so you pay for the gray one, and there are opportunities to make that one go smaller. And how do we do that? Well, it's education opportunity, and here's what goes where. You know, it's re-educating folks on what's different now. And there's also a recycled component to this, because it's not just contamination on the yard waste side, but it's also contamination on the recycled side. So there are some limitations on what can go in the recycled, particularly around contamination, and that's part of the whole education campaign as well. So it's, you know, here's what the new paradigm looks, and all the reasons why we're doing it. And you know, if you want to continue on the path you're on, there's a rate increase involved. If you want to look at shifting your food waste and things to the brown one, you could probably make your gray one go smaller, and not a rate increase involved. So it's an opportunity.
So we'll look at June 7th for setting a public hearing date on this.
Yeah, June 7th we would bring back. That would be a formal item. At that point, the council authorizes us to send out notices. Every customer in American Canyon would get a notice of the date of that hearing, that Prop 218 hearing, which would be in August. In that notice would be all of the information that we want to share, what the rate increases would be, the comparisons, education opportunity, and it also sets the date of that protest hearing, and then subsequent to that, we start sending out the actual ballots and so forth.
Good opportunity for some education on this matter as well.
Correct.
Okay, very good.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I think we have the direction we need. Thank you.
Moving on our agenda.
Thank you, Derek. Thank you, Erica.
Next item up is, thanks for the presentation, lady, by the way. Good information. Next, we'll take up item number 13 on our agenda, award construction contract for the Eucalyptus Sidewalk Gap Closure Project, TR 19-0400.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. That's another Public Works item. We're here tonight to award the construction contract for the Eucalyptus Sidewalk Gap Closure Project. Typically, this would be brought on a consent item, but since it's been a long-awaited project, we want to bring it to business and also talk about the remaining right-of-way acquisition that we're still waiting on. We have 2 agreements in hand, and we're still waiting on 3 others. One is just waiting on a vested change from a trust. We had someone pass away on a trust on the north side of the Eucalyptus Drive. And then we have two property owners, part of the original Armio development. We reached out and made contact today. They've been out of town, but they're supposed to get comments to us this week. We had a verbal understanding with them 6 weeks ago before we went out to bid that they were ready to sign, and then once the agreement got in hand, they had questions. So as of today, it sounded like they're back on board. They just had some concerns of the agreement. Our city attorney's already made adjustments to that that we're waiting to hear from the resident that's part of the two homes on the development that was built as far as the deferred agreement in 2006. So with that, the award of construction contract, FJ&I Engineering Incorporated out of San Pablo Bay. They are a fairly new company, but they're from other well-known groups. We actually did some reference checks on them, and they do great work. So I know they're excited about getting them started on this project as much as the city is. I'm not sure about as much as the city, as this is a long overdue project. But the goal is to get this started as soon as the contract's executed and we have the final right-of-way agreements in hand. And the goal is to have it done before and open before school starts and this fall. So with that, I'll leave it to you to either have public comment or discuss it amongst yourselves.
Any question regarding changing in the pedestrian traffic? Now we have the new Napa Junction School. Used to be a lot of traffic on Teresa. Families in that neighborhood who move over here to the old Napa Junction School. So I'm assuming now traffic's going to be more along Eucalyptus from those families. Pedestrian traffic, Eucalyptus, yeah, for the school kids.
Hopefully there's more pedestrian traffic. We actually had a walking audit last Wednesday, and it seemed a lot were going through the neighborhood and Wetlands Edge.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it's a safe route to school.
Yes.
And this will provide that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It'll close the sidewalk gap on the south side of Eucalyptus. It's going to widen the road slightly to the north. That's why we're waiting on the David Williams Trust on the north side. There's a concrete line ditch on that side of the property that we are going to replace with pipe and widen that segment, put in a curb. I've heard there's been some accidents where residents have driven off into the ditch there. So that should hopefully be taken care of. Yep. And widening out the Teresa intersection slightly with a nice larger curb radii with that improvement. So
very good.
There'll
Councilman?
be 3 on-street parking stalls if we reach agreement with our 2 residents.
All right.
Well, yes.
Member Joseph.
Yes, well, I hope you can reach those property agreements one way or the other and to do it expeditiously. But the other question I had is, several years back, we acquired the house there on the corner, specifically with the idea of ensuring that if you needed some right-of-way on the north side, that was there. And I can't read blueprints worth a darn. So what are we doing on our property there? Are we removing the fence and the trees, just the fence, or what?
It's capping that concrete ditch at this point in time. I have to look back at the plan specifically to see if that fence moves over, but it's a little bit encroachment onto the existing right-of-way.
Well, I guess for me, the fence is old enough and probably needs to be replaced. Are the trees going to be saved, though?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
But, as you know, that there's the plan to have the Bay Trail continue on the east side. That's why we want to be very careful in what we do with this project, because we know that east-west trail connection will happen there eventually.
Okay. Well, that's very good. Well, I'm sure there's someone in the audience that wants to comment. So.
Any other comments? Councilmember Washington, comment?
Yeah, you mentioned that there's some type of safety feature that's going to be added for safe passage for the students or the pedestrians walking. I couldn't hear what that was. You said they're adding 3 of them.
On-street parking. So we're trying to make amicable resolution with property owners as they're losing frontage where they existently parked on the gravel. So they requested to dedicate additional property so that we could accommodate additional on-street parking for the frontage of their homes, but it's still going to be sidewalk all the way through there. The Armio lots? Correct. Correct. So that was the pedestrian improvement, sorry.
Okay, I just didn't hear it. Okay. Thank you.
Right, any other questions from council? Public comment, ready for that? Public comment is open on this matter. Good evening.
Good evening, Cindy Biederman on American Canyon. I don't know where to start. Right. So first, Erica, we are blessed to have her. Thank you for hiring her. It's nice to see work go forward. When I started advocating for a sidewalk there, my youngest one was about 1 year old. She's now in 3rd grade. So nice to see that this is happening. I do hope that everything does progress smoothly and adequately, especially knowing that there was a contract in place, and I would, to me, if they can't do the admirable thing and get it done, they've been given an opportunity to get things done. But it's not only because it's an ethical thing, the right thing. We have that Valley View homes on the end, or on the corner there, Teresa and Eucalyptus. I've watched people in wheelchairs trying to get through there. I know what it's like to try to get through there with the stroller. You cannot bounce on the street because you'll get ran over, and it's certainly hard to push a stroller through the gravel. But I do want to sincerely thank all of you guys and the staff for getting this done. I can't wait till it's done. I can't wait till the ribbon cutting, and Beth is going to bring the champagne for christening. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. I know we're all looking forward to that as well. Appreciate that. Any other public comment on it? Any other comment from attendees?
I have no comments online.
Very good.
Well,
Okay, then we'll close public comment, return to council for further discussion, desired action.
I would like to make a motion that we award the contract. Let me get there. Well, first of all, I'd like to point out that lately I've been walking to City Hall more often and using that gravel area. So I'm becoming a big advocate of saying, yeah, it really does help to be able to walk and not have to worry about whether there's a car behind me. So at any rate, I will make a motion, if there's no other suggestions or comments, a resolution of the City Council of the City of American Canyon, 1, increasing the Eucalyptus Sidewalk Gap Closure Project, TR 19-0400 budget to $315,000. 2, awarding a construction contract to FJ&I Engineering, Inc. in the amount of $219,186. And 3, authorizing the Public Works Director to approve contract change orders in an aggregate amount not to exceed the project budget.
I'll second it.
Motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Joseph.
Yes.
Councilmember Oro.
Yes.
Councilmember Washington.
Yes.
Mayor Garcia.
Yes. Thank you, council. Thank you. We'll move on now to item number 14, Residential Recycled Water Delivery Program.
Thank you, Mayor and Council, staff, and public. Felix Hernandez, Maintenance and Utilities Director. I'm going to attempt to raise this up just a bit. So as the presentation, the SB 1383 presentation pointed out, the city and the state was facing drought and water deficit last year. As part of that, the city quickly went from a stage 1 drought emergency to a stage 2 drought emergency, where we asked all customers to reduce water usage by 20%. And in that, staff were able to help the residential customers in developing the recycled water delivery program. Part of that program requires residents to fill out an application, attend some training, online video trainings, and then we would roll out this delivery. So when we started this delivery, we had roughly 50 customers. It quickly grew to over 300 by the end of November of last year, and to present day, we have roughly 550 applicants. And those people are folks that have completed the application and completed the training as well. As we started to do delivery, the Maintenance and Utilities Department, along with the Public Works Department, we didn't direct staff, we said, asked for volunteers for staff, and they were happy to help us out. So we started delivering this water July through November. It was a 5-month time frame for where now we are trying to get ahead of this as we continue to face ongoing drought. In analyzing this delivery program, staff did look at 3 options. Option 1 would be status quo, continuing to do what we're doing now with current staff. Option 2 was renting the truck, hiring a driver, and then using staff to administer the program. And then option 3 was contracting for all, the truck, the driver, and to administer the program. Staff did receive 4 quotes from 4 companies. In that, we found that partnering with American Tank and Water Hauling would be the best option. They were the only quote that we received that provides everything. They do the routes, they provide the driver, the truck, they do all the scheduling, text message and emails. We would have a little bit of time that we would help in administering it with them, getting them used to the delivery and how we went about doing it, where one staff member would take 1 to 2 weeks along with that contractor. That, in a nutshell, is the recycled water delivery program, and I'll take questions.
Councilmember Joseph?
Yes. As I raise some of these concerns with the city manager, I guess my first question is, I need to, well, the very first question is, according to this, it's American Hauling is $161,200, but we're being asked to budget $194,000. So the first question is, what is the difference between the two numbers, or what's that going for?
Thank you, Councilmember Joseph. Staff did include a 20% contingency in the overall cost. So the 161, if you will, plus 20%. And I'd like to point out that I do have Pam Phillips with me tonight, Staff Member Pam Phillips. Sorry, Pam.
Okay. And that contingency would be based on, we got more customers and he's got to, expand the route, or
That's what we were thinking. We currently have, like we said, we ended the year last year with 300, and now we have roughly 550 people. We've also had some commercial folks that have approached us on whether or not we can do some delivery for some commercial properties. So we're also looking at that.
Okay. And then the next question is, in our analysis, we have 2 drivers. And I don't understand why we need 2. And then the related question is the bid we received, are they using 2 drivers or just 1 to actually make the deliveries?
I'm going to let Pam speak to the second part of it, but I will take the first part. When we first developed this program, we really took a strategic approach. We looked at it and we said, okay, we got 50 people signed up. With Pam kind of leading the administrative side of things, we had 1 staff member that would deliver. As we started getting more applications coming in, again, strategically thinking through this, we wanted to reduce that workload, and then we started really changing our routes and how to be the most efficient. Again, workload on 1 individual. But what it also allowed us to do was build a sense of community. When we have staff members out there, we reduce that load, but we have staff members that were excited and eager to do it because they got to go out and what they don't normally get to interact like that with the community, which was really a benefit for us. It was a benefit for morale in the department, and I think a benefit for the community. So I'll let Pam speak to the second part of that.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. So can you repeat your second part of your question?
It was a 2-parter, I guess. 1 is, why did we need 2 drivers for our program? And 2, is American Hauling using 1 driver or 2?
So part of having 2 drivers was we didn't have the same people every single day, but the routes were pretty much every single day the same. So it was really difficult sometimes just to say, okay, I'm doing a Monday, but then I'm going to do next Thursday, and they're different routes, so it's a whole new route, so it takes a lot more time. Versus the company will only have 1 driver, but they'll know all the routes. They'll know the routes. And just talking to, like I talked to Recology about how they do their routes, and that's what they say. It's having 1 person do a route, the same route, is much quicker. Versus having 1 person do one route and then another route and another route. However, having just one person do the whole city, they'll learn the city in a couple weeks. That's why we would have a drive along in the first couple weeks as well.
Okay, so that makes sense, but we're assuming 2 full-time drivers. I guess I'm trying to figure out if we're doing apples and apples or something else, because if we're costing 168 grand, which I was able to figure out by adding the 98,000 for United Rentals, the 63,000 and the 12,000 for the 2 full-time and the admin. I mean, it would have been handy if somebody had added up what the city's costs were, so we could say, oh, okay, that's 168, and this is 161, it's slightly higher. But if we only needed 1 driver, then we would be cheaper. And so that's why I'm trying to figure out why you're using 2 full-time equivalents, unless you're saying you'll have 2 people out there delivering, so many routes that you need 2 delivery trucks, or what? I guess where I'm coming from is I'm not seeing the apples and apples comparison. I don't see how, contracting out for 160 grand is a better price than doing it in-house if we were doing similar arrangements. I'm trying to figure out what is the least expensive scenario, and I'm not getting it from the information you've provided.
Thank you, Councilmember Joseph. I'll elaborate on that more. To Pam's point, we're not only we're delivering recycled water, but we're also doing all of our other functions. So when we have 2 people, as it started ramping up, the efficiency of it was person driving, person undoing the reels, another person getting the drums ready to go. When we're talking about apples to apples, we just can't have one person do it. I mean, that's operationally, it's just not efficient for us. And again, it's taking the strategic approach. I like to think of it as this rate of diminishing returns, where we're going out there, we're doing this work, but we're also, we've asked staff to take this lift in very short order last year. And even now, being able to plan, we're still doing 4 other divisions throughout the department where we've taken that staff time away. So to Pam's point, one person with a contractor, that's all they're doing. They're delivering water. That's it. Whereas as opposed to our staff, where we're negotiating time off, people that are, if you have sick, whatever those things we're juggling around these staff members. And again, the load for us is it's really hard to quantify that, right? To really put it into hard numbers. There's just some things that are kind of, I think, maybe the intangibles, if you will, that just hard to put a number to.
All right. And then the other issue would be, we could go out and hire a temporary maintenance worker or whatever through the summer months. So, I'm not saying that we should just put the burden on the guys, because I get it. Last year, it was a great service and everybody really stepped up. I'm not suggesting we just continue burdening the staff. I'm suggesting that it may be less expensive to recruit somebody whose sole function is you work for 6 months delivering water.
Yeah, we thought of that as well, and we didn't get into the weeds on it, but in kicking it around with staff, we thought, how are we're gonna have to find a Class B driver that's essentially retired or unemployed. And as it stands now, even getting these people on board, which we started, we like to think we started rather early, they're saying, hey, what's happening? Because they're so ramped up. My point is that person to drive that vehicle, I'm saying there's few and far between right now with the way that the state of the state with the drought and people doing recycled water deliveries.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Washington?
Yeah, as always, I really always appreciate Councilman Joseph's mindset when it comes to the financial part. So thanks, Mark. But from an operational standpoint, I like what you're saying, Felix and Pam, what you're mentioning, because I look at it from an operational standpoint. I would much rather have those drivers who are delivering water right now fixing items in the city versus delivering water. Not saying that delivering water is not important, but I think that if we contract it out to someone to do that, that's what they do is deliver water, then we are managing our resources the way we should be. I think if we take away a subject matter expert from doing what we need done in the community to deliver water, we will have more residents in this room complaining about things that aren't getting done that should be on schedule. So I look at it from an operational standpoint. But I do understand the financial piece that Council Member Joseph is mentioning. So I applaud the ideals that you've brought up, the options that you've also provided. But I too agree that contracting sometimes is the best solution when it comes to even benefits. If one of our persons get injured while delivering water, that impacts us tremendously. So from an operational standpoint, and I'm an operational-minded person, so that's why I look at it from that standpoint. And I argue all the time with my procurement at my daytime job about finances versus operations. And so from an operational standpoint, I think that going with the contractor is ideal for what we're trying to do to support the community in both ways, delivering the water and be able to fix things that we should be fixing with the subject matter experts. That's it.
Councilmember Oro.
Yeah, thank you. We've got a couple questions, and I'll comment on Councilmember Joseph's questions, and I appreciate trying to figure out where we can save money. The one thing I didn't hear in that discussion that you two were having there was opportunity cost, and I think that's the word you were looking for, Felix, was the cost that it costs staff, time to do and take away from the work that you're doing, because I know what Pam does for a living, and she had a new job last summer on this recycled water program, and I think it extended her. And I know what Steve does for a living, and I saw him in my front yard filling up a barrel. That's the opportunity cost, and I think that easily equals out what we can do on the contract work. So I think it's worth it to do this and to give this a shot and give this a try. It seems like we have the funds for it, but we also got to remember the bigger thing. We've implemented this program because we're in a severe drought, and we're trying to bring down our water usage all across the board. And that is the price we have to pay today for this. And I think it's very worthy to do this. And, the mayor and I toured a couple of candidates for supervisor here in American Canyon. There's a couple races going on up there, and we wanted them to get to know American Canyon. And one of the things that they commented on was all the recycled water bins around here, and wish they could do that in St. Helena, wish they could do that in Napa. They wish they could do that in other places. So it's a great program to do. That said, on these routes, I would like to have an improvement. Lots of people use this for gardening or watering their lawns or doing whatever they do. If you recall last year, I brought it up because I was like, hey, I only have a decorative water fountain. I didn't need water on a weekly basis. I only need it like once a month, really. Will the schedule allow for people to have one-offs and rather than just on a regular basis? And I'm hoping you do that because, I did lug it down to the recycled area once, and what a bear to get that barrel out of my truck and roll it back into the backyard. I would love for somebody to deliver that water for me, and I'm sure there's others as well.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Oro. We're, as Pam was around this one, we're developing this continual process of improvement, and the feedback is well taken. I'd also like to point out that last year we delivered for 5 months, where we're hoping this year we get started a lot sooner. We'll get another 4 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks, additional water savings there.
Well, very good. I think, I'm a user, so that's good. I'm a 4-barrel house because my wife has an extensive succulent garden. It's worked out quite well. Actually, I was going to offer Councilmember Oro, if he needs, I did come by a free submersible pump. So you just drop that in the barrel and hook up your hose and water.
I actually have that, but it's a long way to the backyard with that thing with the barrel.
Go out and buy some cheap hoses. I think I'm impressed with the program. Do you have any estimate of how many gallons of water units we are measured on our utility bill?
PM, do you know that offhand?
No, I know, last year, we saved a total of, last year we delivered about 1.1 million gallons in 5
Wow.
months.
Yeah,
So what is that, 3.2 acre feet maybe, I think?
that's a considerable amount of water. Yeah, it's a
And
good
just,
program.
you know, we were kind of flying off the seat of our pants last summer. So my vision for this summer is a little bit more structure as far as maximum amount of water people can have. And again, if you, like to Councilman Oro's point, if you don't want water, I think last year it was just take your barrels away, take them off the street, or they can't be on the street, but take them back so that they don't get filled up. So there will be rules that, you know, we'll publish for people to adhere by.
Okay. You limiting the number of barrels?
I think we're going to limit the number of gallons to fill up to 300 gallons. There wasn't really a limit last year, but there wasn't over, I think there might have been a few houses over 300 gallons, but for the most part it was under, but we just have to make sure that people aren't getting the like 2 or 3 250-gallon totes that, you know, we have available and,
Right, yeah.
and expecting all of those to be filled up, so.
All right. It seems like a reasonable amount to me, just based on my own use.
Yeah, because you figure like the 300 gallons, that's 6, you know, that's 6 of the 55-gallon drums. Most people have 2
Yeah.
or 3. And then you have to, you know, figure out how to get it out. So we also want to put together either, you know, some sort of videos or a page where people can go and get ideas on how to get the water from point A to point B. Yeah, so those are the plans.
That's good planning on that part. No, I really appreciate the program. I think a lot of people do. I've had an opportunity to catch up with city staff when they're delivering it at my house, so it's always a great place to, like you say, building community, yeah.
And I think a lot of the drivers, the maintenance guys who went out, they loved it. They would get cookies and cake and all kinds of, but just people enjoyed it so much that it made the drivers feel good about what they were doing, which helps.
Oh, that was great. I always do appreciate those who work for the city, for all of us. Thank you. Councilmember Joseph?
Yes, I just wanted to make some clarifying remarks. Number one, I do appreciate the service. I have just recently augmented my little cube and all that with a smaller container that I've got on my truck, so I'm now experiencing the thrill of filling it up at the Corp Yard. So I'm all on board, so I don't want anybody to think other than that. And my questions here are really based on, I'm trying to figure out what's the most efficient way of doing it. And maybe right now, given the staffing shortages more globally, contracting out with somebody makes it easier. But I do think, you know, on a year-by-year basis, there will come a point where the program settles down to a point where we can probably do it in-house just as efficiently, and that may be where we head. Not necessarily doing it by absorbing it within existing staff, that it would probably involve hiring a temporary person for 6 months during the summer. And so for me, you know, and it may be robust enough that you don't, you know, that you do have biweekly service or some kind of a more sophisticated routing system because it becomes more of an ongoing service. So I'm certainly on board. My questions are trying to make sure that we're thinking it through and we're being economically prudent and so forth. And somewhere down the road, not during a drought, but somewhere down the road, we may look at it as a more formalized service with a cost structure and a service fee and so on. So there's a lot to this, and I think it's exciting. And you know, I don't want my comments to be viewed as I'm against it or against staff. I'm saying this is a great service, and we need to look at it as a 2 or 3 year process to get it up to running really effectively and smoothly and as efficiently as possible. So, thank you.
How many acre feet again was saved? You mentioned the number.
There were just 3,
2 or 3.
How much did we deliver?
3.2 acre feet.
3.2.
Yeah.
Okay, but there was.
MGD or
Yeah, I think it's 435,000 or some 435,000. So
Just trying
it's
to
about
save that note in my head when I talk to people about it.
As the program progresses, we'll be happy to update council on the.
Yeah, please do.
The volume delivered.
Thank you.
And to put it in perspective, I am now that I'm kind of online with recycled water, I'm looking to shave 2 or 3 units of water out per month. So,
Yeah.
which is like a $20 a month savings on my water bill.
That'll pay for that extra bin you're gonna have to get.
Yeah, well, no, we're getting the bins free. It's part of the deal.
There you go. Buy a pump with that. Mr. Holly, comment?
The only thing I wanted to add, Mayor, and this may help as we explain this program, that 1 million gallons is a large number, but it's represented by the tank that we have on the hill there near the high school. There's a recycled water tank you can kind of see. That's about a 1 million gallon tank. So that tank is the amount of water that we hand
That's a
deliver
great
to
visual
our
reference.
residents
Thank
last
you.
year, and it wouldn't surprise me we've got close to double that this year, given the robustness of the program. So you think of it in those terms, acre feet's a little bit hard for people to grasp, but tank on the hill.
Look at the tank on
that's
the hill.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
how much.
that's the kind of delivery we're bringing to the people.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Did we need direction on this, or was just let me find
Yes,
out.
Mayor, there's a recommendation and a resolution.
Yes, there is. So we have a contract. Get back here.
Just as a clarification, this is a year-to-year contract or just a contract for this year?
Correct.
Okay.
It's a resolution. We need to, is there a motion to accept the resolution?
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 2022 next in order. A resolution of the City Council of the City of American Canyon authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with American Tank and Water Hauling in the amount not to exceed $194,000 to administer the residential recycled water delivery program.
I'll second.
Motion second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Joseph,
Yes.
Councilmember Oro,
Yes.
Councilmember Washington,
Yes.
Mayor Garcia.
Yes. Thank you, council.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Moving
Thanks,
on to
Pam.
management
Thanks,
staff
Felix.
oral reports.
Oh, that's
we
an
didn't have public
excellent point.
comment. I'm sorry. Public comment. Feel free to comment. Do we have anybody online? I got too so caught up in the presentation. Sorry about that. My apologies.
Yeah. Do that one too.
I just want to commend Pam for all the work she did last year. It was fantastic. I was a user. I have a big backyard. However, I did the Cash for Grass last year, so I really condensed it. But forgive me for how I'm saying this, but I have a lot of friends from Vallejo, and they would come over and they'd see my tote, and they go, "Wow, where'd you get that?" And I explained, "Hey, the City of American Canyon gives us to us." They go, "Well, can we get that?" I said, "No, it sucks for you to live in Vallejo, doesn't it?"
Well, we're forward thinking here. Certainly we are. Any other public comment? Anyone online?
There are no hands raised.
Okay. So we discharge our responsibilities there. Thank you for that. Now management staff oral reports. Mr. Hawley?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and Council. Felix, Ali, and Erica all have updates for you. Oh, and Jennifer has raised her hand to me. She has an update also.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. Again, wanted to give an update that we are partnering with the ACCPF Watershed Explorer program this year. It was, we participated in the past. It got sidelined, but it's ramping back up. We are participating. That'll be May 19th and June 9th. And what that entails is that we would go out, the students come out to the wetlands, and we set up some different stations. We have staff go out there, and we talk about the wetlands, the benefit of the wetlands, some of the jobs that we do to help benefit that in the environment, water quality, and the pond system that we have out there as well. So I want to put out there, we're partnering. Come by Thursday, May 19th, 8 to noon, Thursday, June 9th, 8 to 2. Thank you.
Thank you.
I had to cut in front of Allie. She's too funny, so I don't want to follow that. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So I just wanted to let you know that as a part of the recycling and waste reduction program to encourage reuse. The citywide yard sale is back this year.
Yay.
I've gotten so many emails about it, so I really thought people would scream when I said that. So the website actually went live today. It's amcancitywideYardSale.com. And for anybody that is new, that doesn't know in the last 2 years since we haven't had one, basically years and years ago, some community members, I can't remember the organization that headed, I think it might have been the Lions Club. The weekend after Memorial Day, there was a weekend-long Friday, Saturday, Sunday community-wide yard sale that was organized. And so throughout town, everybody would do their yard sale that weekend and really maximize the visitors that would come into town to go shopping. And so a few years ago, the city started helping to facilitate that by helping to create maps and get signups and all those kinds of things. And so what we do now, well, 2 years ago, and we're going to do again this year, is we have a website that we host that people can go on to the website and sign up their sale to host their sale. And they can indicate the days and the times that they want to participate. They can list the types of items. And then the city advertises the sales through our social media and all of those things. And we also provide sale hosts a free yard sale sign for them to put in their front yard to help direct shoppers. And that is all at no charge to the participants. And then shoppers can go onto the website and they can peruse through the online ads and choose their ones that they want to go to and create a customized map and follow around town and do their thing. So I think people are really excited about it. We usually have, I think the most we've had was 135 sales. We typically always go over 100, so we'll see what happens this year. But that's my update.
Very good, thank you. We're glad it's back.
Before you go, though, Jen, on the subject, you used to have the recycling thing, old tires, e-waste, mattresses, that kind of thing. Is that still in the works?
Well, Councilmember Joseph, we have ongoing resources all of the time to dispose of those things. So we started a program a few years ago, Clean Sweep and the Final Sweep event. And the goal of that program was to kind of take the most difficult items to dispose of and create one centralized place to dispose of them at. Almost all of those items, except for tires, you can dispose of within a few miles of American Canyon now. Oh. So we don't have a plan at this point to do an event like that, but that's something that we could always consider.
Well, all right. Thank you.
Yep.
Good evening. So I have a few community updates. Tomorrow evening, please join us as we will be hosting our first hybrid and in-person Zoom and over YouTube OSAC meeting. And then on May 5th, we have Napa Valley Tourism Business Improvement District meeting. Also on May 5th, the Napa Valley College will be hosting a hybrid job fair. And then May 6th through May 8th, there is an event that you can go online and register and sprinkle somebody's front yard, Mother's Day hearts, for Mother's Day. It was really cute, like little flamingos and stuff, super cute. May 7th is our Critical Mass event. That is going to be at Com Park 2 from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. This is in partnership with the Napa County Bicycle Coalition, American Canyon Cycling, American Canyon Police Department, and Fire Department. To participate, we encourage you to go online and register. And then on May 12th, we have our hybrid PCS meeting. And then May 17th, we have our accessory dwelling unit roundtable conversation and live Q&A in Spanish. And then on May 19th is a traffic calming public workshop. And just for giggles, I have one little tidbit. May the 4th be with you until Cinco de Mayo, but then you'll feel the revenge of the 6th.
That's good.
Happy May.
Are these posted on the city webpage, community events calendar?
Yes, all of the things that I brought up this evening are all on our community events calendar.
Well, may the 4th be with you.
I'm not going after Ally anymore. No, I'm joking. On that note, I was asked to give an update on Devlin this evening. We are in the final stages of completion. The road looks available to be open, but it's not drivable yet. They're still working on the roundabout at Devlin Road. That was part of the Napa Logistics project to be completed, but they had to wait till the city project got substantially completed to finish that. So if anyone was out there today, I was out there this morning, and I got chastised. I had my jacket on, but they still wanted me out of this site. But they are tying in the medians on the roundabout now. They're in the final touches at the concrete curbs. They're supposed to be done by the end of next week. We're still waiting on the PG&E installation of our meter to energize not only the street lights, but also the irrigation so that the landscaping can go in. We don't have to wait for the PG&E meter to have a ribbon cutting, so we're working with our department, Public Works, and Communications Manager Jen Kanzabak on getting a final date or an anticipated tentative date at the end of this week to bring back and poll the City Council on their availability, possibly the first week in June, probably not the weekend before Bottle Rock, but trying to also reach out to our partners, our dignitaries, other electeds, because this is a big event for the city. So we want to make it a good show. And in addition to that, we do have a traffic calming workshop on May 19th. It will be a Public Works, Fire, and Police event. We are hoping to roll out a new public outreach campaign, safety improvements for the community. The meeting will be at the Boys and Girls Club from 6:30 to 8 p.m. that evening, and there'll be more news to come. It's on the website. And also to follow up on a public comment this evening about the LLAD, we have the engineer's report coming to council on June 7th, the draft engineer's report and the request to set the meeting. We had 2 public pop-ups for Zone 1 and Zone 2 the last couple of weeks. We only had 2 attendees at the Zone 2, that's the Vintage Ranch LLAD, but we had quite a few folks show up at Lavigne last week. It was a pretty, I think, good event. Lots of questions asked, what we're doing with the funding in the park. One of them is the park replacement at Via Bellagio that will be coming out this year. So we're trying to make sure that we follow council's guidance on getting the outreach on those LA districts. We sent out, I think, we sent out a lot of flyers to all those different zones. So via email, not email, but via letters, so notices on all these meetings. So with that, that's my Public Works update. Any questions? All right,
Thank you. A lot of activity. Yes. Anything further, Mr. Hawley?
That's going to do it, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Well, these are all on the city webpage, event calendar postings for those.
Yes, we encourage everyone to look at our virtual city hall for all that information.
Thank you. Moving on to Mayor Council comments, committee reports, then we'll take up future agenda items. Councilmember Joseph, anything further to add to your report?
No, but I do have a couple of follow-up requests, so
Sure.
when the time comes.
Okay. Councilmember Washington, anything further to add to your report?
The only thing I want to add, and I did get it in on time, and thank you to the clerk. I got it in on time. Just a reminder for everybody that this is AAPI Month, Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month as well. I know we hadn't mentioned it earlier, but I want to give the respect out to our community, our Asian and Pacific Islander community. That's it.
All right. Thank you. A couple of things to report. I'll do my report as oral. The Napa County Flood Control and Water Conservation Board met today. Got an update on what's going on with the water curtailment issue that we had. And I'm sure Mr. Hawley can explain it in more detail than I can. But there's a looking into the whole process of water curtailment. What happens when the availability of water gets low from the origins, then everybody else gets cut down. We had a pretty severe hit with that. Has been corrected, but they want to review the whole process now. Part of what happened was Lake Oroville is filling up from the residual. There's less water available coming downstream, therefore that triggered a curtailment on notification to those jurisdictions below. So they're going to have a public workshop on this whole issue coming up. The priority of that needs to be reviewed. Certainly, we had some anxious moments there in terms of what the impact would be to us. So we'll stay tuned to that. Let's see what else is in here. North Bay Watershed Association annual conference was very good. Extensive information there. You go on their website, you can pick up on their projects page issues they brought forward on the climate act change, sea level rise. Actually, the Flood Board in Napa was one of the sponsors for the event as well. But it gets into quite detail on what's happening with climate adaptation strategy, sea level rise. Part of that is the Baylands restoration, which is our part is connected to that. Actually goes all the way up to South Napa County, city south of Napa City. What we can do to, in terms of habitat restoration, maintenance, sea level rise, several scenarios on what that impact might look like. Some of it might have some impact on us, depending on how high the water gets. So that was good. On the Governance, Transparency, and Labor Relations Committee for the League of California Cities. I know that doesn't sound like a very exciting title, but it deals with CalPERS, the retirement plan that many city workers, those of us who have worked for the state, are on. And a couple of agenda items that came up. SB 1328 by Senator McGuire wants to prohibit investments and contracts with Russia and Belarus. The issue went forward with a support if amended. There was a lot of conversation on this. Frankly, I will give my personal opinion. We're not at war with Russia. There's obviously clearly horrendous things happening, very despicable things happening in Ukraine. But these are benefits to people who work for us, who are the retirees. And that's in American Canyon, it's city staff, fire district, certainly Napa County through the Sheriff's Department. The other one was a SB 1173, Gonzalez, private public retirement system fossil fuel divestment. So on both these issues, the CalPERS staff were there speaking on investments. So this SB 1173, in 30 days, CalPERS would have to review 3,000 investments in petroleum, fossil fuel, for divestment. Again, this one failed for a lot of reasons. Timetable was a bit of a shock factor. I don't know how staff said they don't know how they get through 3,000 investments in 30 days. But again, the impact would be on all the retirees and those who are invested in CalPERS retirement system. By vote of the committee, it failed. Means don't support. Oppose was where our vote landed on that one. Some of that's kind of disturbing to me in a way, but it's logical when one examines it further, I guess. These are only recommendations. Doesn't mean that the state Senate on these bills has to follow them. But apparently in the background, there seems to be huge support for these two bills. So whatever we can do from our end. I remember one comment was considering on fossil fuel climate change, the need to reduce fossil fuel consumption. Yes. There are more ways of doing that than divesting, was a lot of our conversation. They want to save those in support of it, wanted, looking at the future and the impact on future generations and families, yes. And those of us who oppose it say, well, let's look at the impact on those employees who work for us, those of us who are retirees. 35 years with the state, full disclosure on my part. So something to be aware of. I understand these things are often emotionally charged. They are. Climate change is a serious matter. What's happening in Russia and Belarus are serious matters as well. But where I was taking it, in those of us who are opposing these, where there are other mechanisms of addressing these issues. And those investment on CalPERS for city staff. I joined this committee back when CalPERS was circling the drain. They were going broke. They have since rectified a lot of that. But if you divest from this, what happens is then there's less return on the investment, therefore, and Mr. Hawley, I'm sure, can explain it as well, or even better than me. Then a city has to make up the difference, or there's contract differences that have to be made. And one of the outcomes is there's less funds available in the city for doing the work the city needs to do. So we have less capacity to deliver on our services. However you may feel about it, you could contact certainly our elected representatives. We will be from this committee on this whole issue. That, you know, we understand it. Bad things are happening out there. But there are other ways of addressing it rather than going this route, because we also have to consider everybody who's impacted by it. And that's my report. So, Councilmember Joseph, you had something for future agenda items?
Yes, probably a couple of staff reports. First, to follow up on some of the concerns at Napa Cove, and although I think it's a good project because it provides affordability, I'm also sensitive to the fact that most of the neighbors on Melvin aren't as excited. So I'd like to do ask for a couple of things. Number one, we might want to consider having a second meeting, if for no other reason, to just let the residents express their concerns and get any clarification and updates. The second one, though, is to clarify how much outreach was done either by ourselves or by the developer. I recall sometime back we talked about the idea that there's the legal minimum, but then there's also going a little bit above and beyond, just to make sure the neighbors are well informed. And I'm wondering if we required much of that in this particular case, because again, I think we needed to have a little more outreach and a little more time clarifying what's going on and allay some of the fears and concerns. So I would like to see staff consider that. And then secondly, on the Airbnbs, I know we had a brief discussion a few years back. And I think it may be the time that we need to consider doing something. I'm not necessarily trying to outlaw Airbnbs, but I do think there's a lot of them operating and they're not contributing to, you know, the hotel tax that our regular hotels are doing. So I don't want to give them an unfair advantage. And I do want some mechanism where if they do create neighborhood disturbances, we have some kind of mechanism. So I would like to say it may be time to bring it back more from the point of view of seeing whether there's any interest or capacity to address it and regulate a little bit. So that's my ask of my colleagues.
Thank you for that. I would like to your comment on the Cove, the parking issue was raised. I'd like to have some look at that as well. Yeah. Make sure that we are currently experiencing a similar situation with Village at Vintage Ranch, as we're all aware, like parking in the neighborhood. And certainly Melvin Road does not lend itself to on-street parking.
And in that same context, I think it's also important to note that we are also proposing to do some rather dramatic infrastructure changes on Melvin, so that they are going to get traffic calming applications, curb gutter, sidewalk. Yeah. So we do need to emphasize, you may not like the apartments, but you'll love the public works improvements. So I think it might be worth it to do a little more outreach.
Good point there, Councilmember. I think that should be part of the presentation as well.
Exactly. Thank you.
Any other future agenda items?
Yes. Well, go ahead. Yeah. And I have no council to report this week. So I wanted to bring up the Village at Vintage Ranch parking as well. Talked to Umberto, who brought this up a couple months back. He said he hasn't been followed up on, so I just want to make sure that's on the radar somehow. I met with him earlier this week to talk about it, and I promised to flag it. Apparently, we still don't know the rates on that, and I also it's on my plate to contact the developer of that project to see if they can lower that. Apparently, it's like $150 for an extra parking spot a month, when rents there are already like $3,000 a month. And then the other thing I wanted to bring up, we've gotten concerns about Newell Preserve and the maintenance up there. Apparently, it's pretty high up in terms of grass, and I got a comment stating that, hey, it's the worst I've ever seen it. I don't know if that's cattle, but I do know that the grass is pretty high. I don't know if it was the late rains that we got, but it's not in the, I guess the quote was, it's the worst shape that I've ever seen it, and these are people that use it regularly. And I actually don't know who's maintaining it right now. So any information you can pass along to me, I'll make sure I pass it along to them, but note that that has been flagged. Thanks.
And for me, as a courtesy to the speakers earlier today with the community cats, Rose Maldonado, Tammy Wong, Rose Negrete, Andre Gardner, and Michelle, I think we owe them that research, or they're very passionate about what they were presenting. So if most of you are like me, initially when I first heard about the cats, I kind of like blew it off until I had an opportunity to kind of sit there, listen to what they were saying, take a tour with them, and kind of get a better understanding. It's not about just the cats. It's about, controlling the population. So I get their passion. I understood. It took me the time to sit and listen. I'm always an advocate about we need to be better listeners. And I don't want us to have them coming in here and feel as though their requests are falling on deaf ears. So just to make sure that's brought onto our future agenda. And then as a reminder for everyone, May 30th this year is a Memorial Day. That's near and dear to my heart. You'll be getting more information about that in the coming weeks. But I also want to put a request for anybody that knows veterans that may be isolated in their homes. If I can get those people's names and numbers or addresses so I can make contact with them, to add them to this list so I could try to at least get them out, spend some time at our Memorial Park, and show them that we do appreciate them. That's all.
Right. Thank you for that. Is a motion needed, Mr. Hawley, on any of these future agenda items?
Yeah, we can kind of work through these. Just backing on the last one first, as it relates to the animal shelter, we are planning on, I think it's June 17th is our second meeting in June. We're planning to, that meeting is kind of our historic meeting for bringing what would be annual contracts or renewals or what have you for the next fiscal year. So we're planning on June 17th bringing back item related to the contract renewal for the animal shelter. So there'll be opportunity for the public review of that document related to that item on June 17th. As we talked about some of these topics here under future agenda items, I'm going to need to, as it relates to Napa Cove, I agree. It sounds like a follow-up meeting with the residents is in order. So we've provided them with correspondence, and we've already had one meeting with them at least. We've actually had individual meetings as well with folks, but a follow-up meeting certainly seems like it could be in the works and could maybe answer some additional questions they have. So that's not going to be a council item per se. We can report back to council on when we had that meeting and what was discussed. The Airbnb and Village of Vintage Ranch are issues I want to take a look at first. I'm not, certainly we'll update the council on what we find. I'm not seeing the council item per se, but let me see what we take a look at. As it relates to code enforcement and Airbnb, we generally operate our code enforcement on a complaint basis. So we aren't out scouring the internet or scouring different things looking for code enforcement issues. Like I mentioned earlier, in general, Airbnbs are not a permitted use in our residential zoning districts. There's one exception, which happens to be the Vintage Ranch area, which through their specific plan actually contemplates that use. Ironically, that use was contemplated before Airbnb even existed as a technology, so some futurists were involved in the part of that specific plan. But regardless, there is some real kind of loophole language in that specific plan that contemplates a use permit process to the Planning Commission, where someone could have an Airbnb type establishment in their home. We had over the years, we've had one or two people kind of kick the tires on that idea, but have never gone forward with anything from the city. So any Airbnb, on its face would presumably not be operating consistent with any sort of zoning that we have. I don't know that we need to revisit any ordinances or anything like that, because it's our existing residential zoning ordinances that would say that. It's more about a philosophy really on code enforcement. So again, we operate on a complaint basis and haven't been receiving a lot of complaints about parties at people's houses or Airbnbs being rented. We did have one, going back in my memory, I want to say about a year ago, we did have an operator that was operating on the west side that seemed to be doing a lot of kind of egregious things, and they were shut down relatively quickly, I believe. But that was in response to some complaints we were receiving specifically, and were, in our mind, pretty egregiously. So let me take a look first and kind of get an understanding of what complaints we've received, and if we have any. We may even have some pending code enforcement cases against folks. So I can report back to the council, and then maybe we can come up if there is a desire to adopt a new code enforcement strategy and to really take a real proactive approach on the Airbnb thing. We'd bring back to council and get that confirmation of that strategy, because we'd be changing basically what we've done in the past for our code enforcement. So let me take a look and see what's kind of pending on that issue, and then either talk with the council individually or bring it back as an item.
That might be good. For what it's worth, I recall when we were recruiting for the new code enforcement officer, we had a discussion about what should our code enforcement strategy be. So it might be appropriate to bring it back, at a broader level than just Airbnbs.
Yeah, correct.
But I agree. I guess from my perspective, as long as they aren't creating neighborhood problems, I'm not necessarily opposed to it, as long as they're collecting the same TOT that we ask our hotels to do, so that everybody's on a level playing field.
Yeah, and to be clear, they're not. So that is one aspect.
The same
not generating a
question.
neighborhood complaint is one thing, and they're not generating TOT because they're not a permitted use. So,
Right.
So if the idea is that we want to take a more a different perspective on that kind of enforcement of non-otherwise complaint-generating Airbnbs and the purpose of TOT or equity among businesses, want to have that conversation, and then that would be a pivot from how we've done things. So let me take a look and see kind of what kind of scratch the surface on that a little
raised
bit.
to me by an individual regarding people are renting rooms in their houses. Same thing.
Sure, and that's, there is a bit of a slippery slope there. You are allowed to rent a room in your house. It really and you are allowed to rent your house out. And you are allowed to rent your rooms out, generally 30 days is kind of that standard. If someone is going to rent out a room in their house while they're still living there for less than 30 days and they're not using Airbnb, you really are into some gray areas as far as, is that
This is not a 30-day arrangement. This is an ongoing.
Sure, and 30 days tends to be that standard. So more than 30 days is not considered transient occupancy; it's considered rental.
Yeah.
Less than 30 days, generally considered transient occupancy, and would fall under a different use category. It also matters a little bit on whether it's home occupied or not, right? If you live in your home and you rent out a room in your home, and the person's coming and going and may or may not be there 30 days. Is that the same kind of transient occupancy as a bona fide Airbnb where you don't even live here and you're fully renting out every week, or is that the same thing as the DoubleTree? I don't know. And that's kind of the gray area that exists in that world. So, which is again why it's kind of a complaint-based thing, because if somebody renting out a room in their house, probably not generating complaints because they live there, but an absentee landlord may not care. So those are the gray scales that we look at.
Yeah, like I said, I agree with you. There is some grayness, but to that extent, it is something for the council to deliberate on, because we may want to tweak the policy.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, anything further, council?
Mayor, we do need to adjourn to closed session
Do
for
we need
that
to adjourn to
additional
closed session?
aspect of I think it was item 1.
Okay. So we have concluded all our business this evening for the open session. We will now adjourn open session and reconvene in closed session.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Good night, American Canyon.